applies to languages like C++ and Rust, so I guess it's not really that different. The ecosystem. So it's about as dead as can be without being like totally dead. A lot of times you'll dig up forum posts from like 2007. Yeah, it's not great. There is a package manager and a central package repo. There's a bit of activity there, but a lot of times it'll be like, okay, here's the canonical package for this thing. Okay, it hasn't been updated in 6 years. It's a real shame, but the language just never really took off despite being started in 2001. Although I have noticed kind of in the last like couple of years, honestly the last like year, there has been renewed interest in D, mostly because systems programming has really taken off. Thanks Rust and Go. Notably, Serpent OS, which is Aiki Doherty's new distro that he's like building from scratch because I guess he gave up on Solus. All their tooling is in D, which I thought was super neat. Why should you care? Because I've ranted this long already. If you're looking for something nicer than C or C++, less daunting than Rust, less Spartan than Go, or if you just kind of think system programming is neat, or if you just want to learn a cool language and use some kind of rare language features, then give D a try. There's a chance you might already have it installed if you installed the entire GCC set. You might also have an Ada and Fortran compiler with it. All right, so moving on to the second half of this talk. What is Trash D? So we're going to the dump. Trash D is a standalone CLI tool that's almost completely compatible with RM, but instead of permanently deleting a file, it moves it to the trash bin. It's on GitHub at rushdeep1/trashd. It's also a link if you're following along. Give it a star, because that's always nice to see. Why did I make this? This is something I've wanted for a long time, but never really got around to making, or never really found one that I liked. Because there are competitors, and I'll get to those. And then one day, like last week, I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday for me, Techo was talking about how he accidentally RMRF'd his music folder and had to restore from a backup. And I made kind of a joking comment of like, hey, you know, making a version of RM that uses the trash bin should be pretty easy. That'd be fun. It was not as easy as I expected. I did originally start writing in Bash. That was a mistake. All right. Why be compatible with RM? Because that was a question I asked myself many times while doing this. The entire point of the project really, though, is to create a tool that you could just alias, RM is trash, and not even notice the difference. Still just go about, do everything you were doing, but you gain all the benefits of using the standard trash bin. Shows up in your regular file manager as trash. You can empty it through either one. It doesn't get permanently deleted unless you go through the whole two-step. But ultimately, being RM compatible was kind of tricky. RM doesn't have that many flags, but there's a lot of interesting interactions, and the exact results of certain combinations do strange things. Like, for example, there's the -D flag to remove empty directories, and R, which removes directories that have contents. What happens if you put both? The answer is R wins, but that's not necessarily obvious. Or what does -F actually do? Because I honestly didn't realize the exact details of what the -F flag did until I had to do this. It does less than I thought. On top of that,
are you going to tell us what it does? Like, you can't just say that and leave
so
it hanging.
all -F actually does is ignore errors and be silent when it encounters something that it shouldn't. So if it encounters a file it cannot delete, instead of complaining loudly and crashing, it just ignores it and keeps going. Or if it finds, if you try to delete a file that isn't there, instead of freaking out, it'll just ignore the fact that's not there and keep going. That's it. I thought I was doing some magical, like, okay, really delete this file, but no, it's just ignoring errors. On top of all that, I even made the error messages compatible. So if you actually alias RM to trash, you will get as far as I'm aware, the exact same error messages as RM on the off chance someone's parsing the error messages. Because someone out there is probably doing that. All right, I've gotten this question a couple times. Why are versions missing in the release log? Because some sharp-eyed people have asked me about that. If you check the Git history, the missing numbers actually exist. So there's a version constant in the code, and all those numbers actually do exist. But I would write the version, commit it, and then immediately think of something new I want to change. So then bump the version again and change it. And that happened repeatedly. Especially, I jumped from version 4 to version 7. And I'm using a very basic numbering scheme because I'm not really a fan of Semver because I've realized people don't follow it at all. And a lot of times it's kind of meaningless, especially for a very simple tool like this, where there's no real difference between a regular change and a breaking change sometimes. So it's just a sequential versioning scheme. It's just started at 1, went to 2, 3, 4. It's going to keep going up forever. Who knows? Maybe we'll hit 100 or something. All right. Competitors, the surest sign of demand, right? As Sifus pointed out on the programming channel, there's already a tool that exists called RM Trash. However, that's just actually a bash script wrapper around another tool called Trash CLI, which I've actually known about for a long time. Trash CLI is a huge blob of Python code with a really weird CLI UX where it's actually broken up into 5 different commands for some reason to do every separate action you could possibly want with the trash, and is entirely not compatible with RM at all, which is why RM Trash exists, to make it RM compatible. Overall, it's kind of weird and funky, and I'm not a fan. Trash D, on the other hand, is a single no dependency binary that does everything all on its own. Completely implements the free desktop trash spec, as far as I'm aware, ignoring the awkward part that you're actually allowed to ignore. So, future of the project, because you always gotta end on this note, right? The CLI tool is mostly done. I mean, it's a fairly simple tool overall. It probably has some bugs to be squashed and some cleanup to be done, but features-wise, it's more or less where I want. You can move stuff to the trash, you can restore it, empty the trash, you can list all the files in the trash. That's all the operations you really need, so it does basically everything I want it to. Some future goals, though, is getting it packaged for various distros, so that'd be neat, and would definitely be a place where I could probably use help. And generally making people aware of its existence. Congratulations, you have just experienced phase 1 of that plan. And so I'm actually now going to go through a brief walkthrough of the code, if I can switch tabs. Here we go. So it's about, I think it's like 600 lines, 661 lines. It has grown much more than I anticipated. Here, I'll zoom in a bit so it's easier to read. Yeah, I expected this to be about 200 lines, but here we are. So starting off with the usual bits. So this is importing in D. Hooray, sanity, being able to import individual aspects.
Is this not how you import stuff in C?
No, in C you have to use the include, which actually does. So for those who don't know, include actually is effectively a copy paste, where it will copy paste the file you tell it to. You can include not C files, which is interesting and sometimes useful. And also when you include something, it copy pastes it exactly where the include statement is, which is interesting. So got some nice things like random number generations, proper system time handling, strings. This is a neat one, which is a like fake file basically, where you can write to it like a file, but it's just a array buffer. Going through some constants. So we are up to version 7, which I've codenamed Providence. So I'm giving it code names now. 7 was the first named version. It's named after video game bosses. So this is Providence from Risk of Rain. Copyright. This just holds all the different options, which we'll get to the parser later, and some neat things. So structs can have methods built in, and methods can be marked as properties, so that you don't have to call them like this. And in this case, I'm just returning some concatenated strings. But hey, D has string concatenation just built in. And then trash file is kind of doing a lot of various miscellaneous things, but I created it to kind of deduplicate the code quite a lot. Basically, a trash file is any file that is currently in the trash or is about to be added. And that's the two different constructors represent the two different states. But hey, structs have constructors. That's neat. And that gets into the whole weird thing where you have both structs and classes in D, and they're basically the same thing, but not for some reason. I think structs are C compatible and classes aren't. The most important purpose of trash file is it will both write and parse the trash info file, which is defined in the free desktop specification. It actually looks a lot like a unit file, like a systemd unit file. Like it starts with the like square bracketed title and then goes through with the different keys and values. So it does both writing it and parsing it. So this is a neat feature where you can parse something based off of a format string. I have no idea if C has this, but D does, and it's actually very handy. And writing things to strings. So hey, implicit string conversion. So moving on to just some helper functions, we have generics. So this is a generic character type, and then a variadic generic where this is just anything. And then I'm just basically shoving along to write fline, which is basically just printf. I honestly have no idea how you actually like destructure a variadic, but I also don't need to care in this case because I'm just shoving along to write fline. No, there is only the struct trash file, but it could have been a class. Like I could actually just straight up replace the word struct with class, and this is still valid. It's strange. Just some more helper functions, logging, prompting the user for input, things like that, creating missing folders. This one, so again, Cephas pointed out that you can't rename stuff across file system boundaries, apparently. That is just a known limitation of Linux, and apparently all POSIX systems are not allowed to do this. So the official real way you're supposed to do it is just copy and then remove the original, which is interesting and I guess works, but is a little awkward and involves some weird things. Like here I'm like matching against the specific error no, because I need to know, hey, get the exception, but also I need to know exactly what type of file exception it was. And then, so this function basically handles both -d and -r. But keep an eye on this one because I'm going to show you unified function call syntax using this one, because if you notice, it just takes in a string. And in just means it's a non-mutable array. So, or like string is an array of characters. In means you're not allowed to mutate it when you take it in. It's basically like const in C++, but it's only for argument inputs. There is out actually, which is a specific definition of I'm going to modify this, and it lets the compiler know that and the caller know that. All right, so moving on now to the CLI flag handlers, which yes, I've gone to great lengths to comment this as heavily as possible. So if you're reading along after the fact, you're welcome, I guess. So this function will move a file to the trash. It's fairly straightforward, but this is the part I wanted to bring up. So path is a string, and I call .dirok on it. Path does not have a method called dirok. It's this function. So this is the same thing as wrapping it around. If path was inside these parentheses, it would be exactly the same. And so that's the unified function call syntax. I kind of wish they had doubled down on that. because it's a really great feature and it makes a lot of things simpler. But the fact that they have both unified function call syntax and standard methods is kind of strange to me. And I think it would have been nice if they had gotten rid of classes and only had structs, and structs could just contain data. And then you had this notion of unified function calls that you don't need methods, you just do it like this. There has been some talk of Zig getting unified function call syntax and doing exactly that, but I don't actually know the entire status of that discussion because I'm not big in the Zig ecosystem. So yeah, trash just kind of does some basic stuff and also make sure it's a directory, because if it is a directory, it has to write to the dir size file. That's part of the free desktop spec. I don't know why they bother doing this because everywhere else in Linux and Unix land, they walk the directory tree to determine file sizes or folder sizes. But hey, they did it. RM is a simple escape hatch that actually fully deletes a file. Empty empties the recycle bin, doing a lot of checks. List just lists the things in the bin. Del permanently deletes something out of. And restore moves something back to its original location, which was saved in the .trash info file. So moving on to actually one of the neater things that D has in its standard library is a built-in getOp command line parser. So can parse all the different command line flags we have. So here's all the ones that I inherited from RM. Here's the new ones. You can have short flags. You can have documentation string, and it just kind of shoves it into a pointer that you tell it to. So I'm shoving it all into a global struct. It'll even handle generating help text, although I do some alterations to it to get a nicer formatting. And printing versions and doing stuff like that. This function just kind of wraps around checking all the option flags and performing the appropriate action when needed. But the entire point of this function is, now that we're finally getting to the end in main, I wrap that whole thing in a try catch to print out error messages. So all my error handling is here. And some funky things with parsing options and return values, because I'm doing return value propagation all the way up. Everything returns ins. And hooray, we've gotten to the very end. Any questions?
Well, sort of a bit of general one, but like, were you just looking for a project to write in D, and you're like, oh, cool, this is a cool opportunity, or did you start writing it and you're like, this, and then I don't know, you remember D exists or whatever?
So I've been kind of casually learning D for the last couple of weeks, just messing around with it because I thought it was interesting. And as a longtime Rust fan, I thought D was interesting as hey, it's less complicated than Rust, but it's still like, a fairly ergonomic and nice systems programming language. But then I don't have to argue with the borrow checker, and I don't have to argue with complex compound types. And, some people like doing that, and you definitely get some benefits, but I wanted quick and dirty. And then, as I said, I started writing this in Bash, and then Bash is scary, so I kind of gave up on that.
Yeah. Okay, so I assume that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
All right.
Are we doing clapping or something? That's kind of weird over Zoom. So just I don't know.
Right.
Okay.
All right. Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
All right.
Thanks, Steve.
Who wants to go next? I mean, I can if no one else wants to more, but I don't mind. Eat.
I have a script running generating stuff that I want to talk about, so not me.
Well, okay, Eat. I think you said you have to go a bit early, so you want to go next so we can get your thing done with plenty of time.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's fine. I can do that now.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Well, does anyone else have any constraints?
No, I can go anytime.
No. Okay, fantastic. So Eat.
Okay. Oh. Okay, I just. Okay. Oh,
How do you do the share? Oh, there's a button.
Now, where did everything else go? Oh, there it is. Okay, now share my screen. Excuse me. Select window or screen. Nope, not that one. Where did it go? Nope, not that one. Yeah, that one. What else? Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay. Let me full screen it. Can I full screen it? Nope, I'm pressing the wrong button.
Someone has a very aggressive trackpad.
Yeah. Okay. Now, hopefully you just remove that. Replace notes. Notes. I'm still getting used to how Fedora handles all of the things. I'm used to the screen popping up, but no, on Fedora. Anyway, so I'm going to talk about how Doom and the wider community facilitated my descent into madness, as I'm calling it. Yeah. So this was me before. Like, look at how happy he is. He's got everything. There's a zest for life in his eyes. He has it all. His friends, his grandpa's glasses, but that's about it. This is me after. This guy has literally no soul left. He's dead inside. He sacrificed it all to Satan to make sure his dot files are reproducible, which is not even entirely true. So we're gonna chart this path from this wonderful summer child to this dead in the eye teenager to see as a warning, but also as a guide to all weary travelers looking for the sweet embrace of a comfy system. So let's start at the beginning. It's a pretty good place to start. I've been using Linux for about 2 years. I started just before my GCSEs, which are a set of final exams for 16-year-olds in the wonderful United Kingdom. It became a hobby to fiddle with my OS and learn about the different programs and their interactions. It was very illuminating for me as computer science was very as computer science education, especially at the level I was very Spartan. And this hobby only grew after the time. This hobby only grew with the time a post-exam summer can give you. And before I knew it, I was heading into sixth form, which is a final 2 years where we specialize in 3 subjects, with all of this newfound knowledge and interest in computer science. A thing about my school is that every student needs a new laptop. So I got a new laptop and I used Windows for a while, which I absolutely hated, especially coming from the wonderful world of Linux. But then Christmas break came around and I accidentally wiped my drive trying to dual boot. What I didn't know was that this was a blessing in disguise because I could give Linux half my drive and fully daily drive it, which was not only a great learning experience, but was also a very good way to annoy all my friends. So it was also around this time that I was looking for VS Code replacements. It always felt like an incomplete solution, even though it had a monopoly in my comp sci class. It just felt opaque, hard to extend, and a pain to integrate into my growing dot file collection. So in hunting for a lot of different editors, I tried a bunch. So I tried GNOME Builder, I tried gedit, I tried Vim for a while, I tried VS Codium thinking it might help, and then I also tried PyCharm. None of these really stuck. There was a point I was considering LibreOffice Writer. None of them were really ticking all of the boxes. Then that infamous DistroTube video came out, And just like with Linux, I fell in love. It ticked all of the boxes I ever needed. So talking about those boxes, it was fast. Also quite fast, but it also was a massive memory hog. It was a pain to work in it at sometimes, but with Doom, for the most part, it wasn't. It was clean, something that a lot of the other editors, especially PyCharm, didn't have. It was easy to extend and hack on, and the community is wonderful. And this is a surprise that I will discuss a little bit later on. Add to that the legends around Emacs and some of the best Vim emulation I've seen, and I was hooked. It was as if I was a fish on a line. Anyway, so starting off with Doom, we all start off in the init.el. And being new to this entire world and seeing all of these tools and languages, it felt like Christmas. It felt like shopping when I opened up that file, and it gave me so many breadcrumbs to go and explore. It was just wonderful. From the little witticisms I read about the languages and the tools Doom had set up and worked my way through some of them. This alone was not enough to turn me into a madman, though. The madman I am now, though. I needed a place to talk about them, and boy, did the Doom community help me with that. So, while Doom itself helped me facilitate my bike shedding somewhat, it was the people that really drove me to learn more. I spent a lot of time lurking in the server, watching as Techo did some really cool stuff with LaTeX and org. Tools that I knew a little bit about are mostly from Luke Smith, well, except the org part, but I didn't use them for anything more than small documents. Monad showed me the ways of the Haskell and reciting spells I wish I understood and kind of do now. I had reached the mouth of the rabbit hole, so to speak, and it was the community that pulled me in. Not only hooked on Doom, but all the stuff that the Doom community had showed me. It was the tipping point, so to speak. And add to that a global pandemic on top, and you had a recipe for a whole lot of procrastination. So yeah, where are we now? So I've charted my path somewhat, but a path is only as good as where we are now. I now use org for all of my document preparation except for large documents. LaTeX, this just annoys my friends even more as I'm just sending them PDFs constantly. Email, RSS, and IRC are all in Emacs. The only two has only ever been used inside Emacs for me. IRC is an entirely different rabbit hole, but I definitely I definitely enjoy going on it. I now have a .files repo that is tied to Nix. I don't think I can ever leave it now. I think you can call it Stockholm Syndrome, but yeah, it's fun, but it's not fun. And I've tried many new languages, a lot of which have been recommended to me through the Doom community, and some of which have become my favorites. And because of all of this and the things that you guys have shown me, I was able to give a set of lessons to a set of students on a whole bunch of topics like the shell, Git, LaTeX, Scheme. Without this community showing me the way, I wouldn't have known about half of these, let alone teach them, which I'm always thankful for. I realized that I now have bullet points that I didn't use. Yeah, I said that I was going mad because of this community, but really I have nothing but praise for it. It has helped me so much to not only find my love for computer science, but to show me so many different cool facets of it. That I'll always be grateful for that. Anyway, that's the end. Thanks for listening. And yeah, if you've got questions, then please feel free to ask.
Why did you not stay with Vim? I'm sort of interested.
It just, I didn't like the terminal workflow. It just didn't feel right to me. It was very much it felt too constricting almost. I like the outside wall of a GUI app and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, who wants to go next? Okay. So, like on the agenda, we have Foskers, we have me, and like Hazel, maybe, but I think they probably want to go last because they seem to still be sort of working on this stuff. So Foskers, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
I'll hike up my britches here and get up to the podium here. Oh, look, isn't that cute? There's a little cacodemon on the.
Yeah.
There. I've stepped on. Sorry for that's bad. Is it doing it now? Yes, it looks like okay. Screen share. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'll demonstrate the Wayland desktop.
It's a black screen.
It better not be.
Okay, wait, no.
Very nice black screen.
My heart skipped a beat for a moment.
So hold on, actually. Oh, is it show? But that's showing my.
It was working for a sec, but it was the wrong window.
It was the wrong window, and I thought I had done it right. So we're gonna do this. We are gonna try this again. Operating system settings. Go over here. Click that, and now it's my. Okay.
Yeah,
All right, there appears to be my Emacs. We looking good?
Yeah. Good to go.
Okay, cool. So I'm on somewhat spotty internet. Maybe I'll turn on my video too. Hello. If it gets too laggy or whatever, if I cut out a bunch, please tell me, and then I'll turn off my video and then just leave it to the screen share, and hopefully that'll be sufficient. How's the size? Shall I make it bigger?
No, it's good. Totally fine.
It's
I will ignore you and make it bigger. No, that's okay. So all right. So this is my presentation. I'm giving it's titled "Contributing to Emacs." I'm using org tree slide mode. I wrote the presentation in org mode, and so it's a talk on Emacs from within Emacs using the one true Doom theme, Doom 1.
How dare you?
So I'll just jump right into it. So there we go. Okay, so I'm Colin. I'm presenting from Canada. Currently, for COVID and other reasons, I'm freelancing mainly in Rust at the moment, which is quite a fun time. I've done a lot of open source stuff in both Haskell and Rust. If there's any Arch Linux users, I wrote Aura, and I'm currently porting it to Rust. Yeah, this is just an org mode file, and it's on the site. So if you want to see the links or whatever later, you can just come in here and click on them. So I've been using Emacs for when did I start using Emacs? That's a good question. I don't even think I remember, but I had, like we all did, right? Like very custom or poorly written custom like config files that you've got your own little groove, you've written your own little functions, you're kind of proud of it. And then I saw a coworker giving a presentation one day at work, and they were using Spacemacs. I think they had like the Nyan Cat thing in the mode line. I was like, this is amazing. Not that I ever used the Nyan Cat mode line, but I checked out Spacemacs. It just made my life so much easier. I didn't have to think about it a lot. Actually, now that I'm in Doom, I realize that I think Spacemacs takes too much away from you, and I appreciate the amount that Doom makes you have to care and be responsible for your own config about. My switch to Doom was sometime this year. I don't quite remember. So as for me, I hang out in the Discord. I've given a few patches to Doom itself. Mainly, I write Emacs Lisp to automate like in-editor workflow. So where it usually be a bash script or something else like that, I just wrote like some Emacs Lisp that would whip open some new windows and like open up some REPLs and things like that, sort of in a project that you're in, or just the fact that you have full control over buffers, no matter what they are, be it a terminal window or like an actual buffer you're editing in, the fact that you have full power over the whole thing because it's all in Emacs is really liberating. And kind of like Yeet was saying, yeah, like if I could never switch off of Emacs now because of like Magit, org, and org Roam. It's just like my life is too integrated into it. VS Code, it just wouldn't. Yeah, there'd just be no hope. It's like it's not just an editor anymore. Like it's not just Notepad where you're writing stuff out. There's just too much. So I recently contributed a new eLisp function to the files API of Stream Emacs. Being more than just, it's more than just like a typo fix. Like you don't have to, it's not that big of a deal to contribute to Emacs if you're just like, oh, I found a typo in the docs. That's fairly straightforward. But because this sort of passed their threshold for how big a patch is supposed to be, the deep end of the entire dev process, like the back and forth, signing the contributor agreement and all that. So the aim of this talk, which is fairly general, explains like the entire like mailing list based workflow from start to finish. When, I mean, certainly, you know, for me, like I would consider myself like a GitHub child. It's like, hey man, where are my PRs and my like, you know, inline commenting and my reviews and stuff like that. That's definitely what I do every day. So I'm more used to that. So going back to the Stone Age a little bit, where we're emailing patches to each other, I was scared at first, but for you listening at home, it's actually not that scary of a process. And in terms of like productivity and things like that, it wasn't bad. Okay, so how's like sound and connectivity so far?
It's
Pretty
good.
good.
Yeah,
Okay,
fine.
any drops?
No.
Okay, cool. All right, fourth. So here's our agenda for the most part. Yeah, it's very straightforward. I'll just jump in. Okay, so the function I added was called file name with extension, and let's actually see if we can file name with extension. There it is. So if you're on Emacs 28, it's on master, and like here it is. It's like in Emacs. It's alive. Here's the docs I wrote and blah blah blah. I originally tried to submit it to Doom, but actually, fortuitously, our wise leader rejected the PR. So I was sad about that for like an afternoon, and I was like, oh, screw that guy. But I realized eventually that, you know, it was appropriate because he gave good reasons, and the one reason was like Doom really didn't need it, and he linked me to the fswap extension function that's provided by f.el, and I looked at that and I was like, and here's the code right here, and it's like, well, because what I wanted was a function that you're used to from every other language, where like if you give it like a file name and you give it an extension, it knows how to smartly put those together. It's not just like a dumb string concatenation. Like it can tell if one, what's even valid, two, is there already a dot somewhere there? Like don't like append extra dots if there's already one in there. One of the arguments is like a directory. Well, don't give it an extension, just stuff like that. And like other languages kind of do that stuff. They have a notion of like a file path type and like what an extension is, and you can rip them off, put them back on. But for whatever reason, this was just missing in Emacs, despite the fact that like every other imaginable file function exists. So I thought it was kind of a strange hole. And one here, I was just like, well, that doesn't do anything. So for about 5 seconds, I was considering writing like my own version of that entire library. Then realizing that, because that's my usual knee-jerk reaction is like, if I don't like one aspect, it's like, oh, I'll just rewrite the whole thing. Luckily, I didn't do that, and I just decided to port this one function upstream to Emacs itself, which turned out to be better. So thank you, Henrik, who is not here, for rejecting my PR, because it let me learn how to contribute to Emacs. So Emacs follows the same development paradigm as the kernel does, and like Arch Linux is Pacman, if you're familiar with that. You go to and you email patches around to each other, and so your what would normally be your PR flow is now like email messages being sent back to you in your normal inbox. To sign up for anything. bad because sometimes you can lose track of things. And if you want to fix your patches, there's no like linear commit history or anything like that. It's basically like you have to resubmit the patch, and then whatever version of the patch was sort of deepest in the thread becomes the one you meant to merge. So I could see that causing some potential issues, but maybe the people with the actual merge conflicts issues. Yeah, and like the reason, and this is usually not an issue for us when we're just like committing on our own projects or whatever, but the reason why there's an author field and a committer field is for this workflow, because this workflow came first, right? Being merged into a project like this. We become the author, and that's what would appear in a Git short log. But the committer is the person who actually like took your patch and physically did the Git commands to put it in. There's two main mailing lists for submitting these things. The Emacs to Vel, people talk about things in general, but there also seem to be a number of just like people throwing up patches on there too, and this is where I got mine in. The docs aren't entirely clear. Techoscore, so really good tips to the commit to who merges the PR. Maybe. That's a good question. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it does. Or well, if it makes a merge commit, I assume that the person who did that, like who made the merge commit, would get the commit credit. But if it was a fast forward, then it'd probably be the author of the PR. Emacs is, sorry, back to the presentation now. And then Bug GNU Emacs is it's connected with their internal bug tracking system, and it gives it like an actual like number, which for our projects it's like PR number 57 or whatever, but like they're like in like the tens of thousands. Doom's doing pretty good, but like Emacs is like, oh yeah, here's issue number like 85,000 or whatever. Okay, so all right, we wanna write a function, and we want to upload it to, we want to get it into Emacs. Okay, well, how do we start? Well, luckily it's not like SVN or anything like weird and old school. Like it's actually just a Git repo. You can Git clone this exact thing here. And actually, if you click on this, it opens up the browser. I'll move that over quickly. Can you see my browser?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, we clicked on that, and like this is the Git. I believe that's the actual Git clone address. But also, if you click on it, it brings you to like their like, okay, here's the commit lists. Here's their various branches that exist. Here's that coveted pgtk branch, which hopefully is going to be merged soon. The action. On we go. Okay, so we clone the repo. Great, we've got it on our system. Now let's actually like go through these hidden steps. So these were the kind of like the real steps that you have to take, even though this is not particularly advertised in their contributing file or in the manual. It's kind of like they basically just say like, oh, if you've got a patch, like write it up and email it, and we'll let you know. Great, but there are actually sort of other things that you have to do before one of the merge gods would actually get it in, and this is, I think, a fairly exhaustive list. Code. This is the final form of it. It did not start like this. To be more clever and careful about things, which I'll get into later, but it turned out not to matter. And it doesn't, what this code actually is doesn't necessarily matter. Understanding the talk. There was a lot of back and forth. Like it took probably like a month to get the patch in. Things were happening. It's email, and then somebody has to get back to you, and it's kind of less archives as well. It's like kind of hard to tell if a particular thread updated or not, because it's literally just a linear history. So it felt a little bit more conservative in terms of getting things in, but I appreciate the value of that, because this is the kind of thing that you would want to get right the first time in terms of the back and forth. Like there were a lot of people who came in and said like, oh, small detail X is not quite right. That was good,
you
I think.
Cutting out like a tiny bit, not the you're understandable, but every once in a while, like they'll like half a word will drop off. I think maybe try turning off the camera.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I'll go for that. Okay, was holding out. It held out till now. Anyway. So they're generally very careful about letting things in, especially a file like this that isn't just a patch. Like this is a new function that's going to appear, and once this is added, it can't be really taken out because then it's part of the API. Downstream is going to be using it. So I could see that people were trying to be careful about like this being right. Yeah, Flugo, like it's pretty nice. I really appreciate the syntax highlighting and everything, and the fact that I can just go in here and fix a typo or whatever as the presentation's going. Okay, so documentation standards now, because you saw that we had doc strings. There are 3 main rules of our doc strings in Emacs lit. Number 1 is the first line must be a complete sentence. If your first sentence was too long and then you're like meta queue, because I like frequently meta queue like anything I'm typing on to get the nice wrapping. If you do that and if your physical period is on the second line sentence, linters will get out at you. So make the first sentence very simple. And I believe that's also the line that appears when you help on it. Yeah, it is. So if you look at file name with extension, that first line of your docs is the first line that appears in the completion menu here. To be concise. The second rule is that past the first line, you must not indent. So physically in the code, I believe in the last one you saw, it looks weird. Honestly speaking, it's ugly in the code. So like you indent this first thing because of Lisp indenting, but then after that, all the strings are left aligned in your editor, and then after that, your real code is re-indented again. So it's not aesthetically pleasing in the usual Lisp way, but yeah. Function arguments have to appear in the doc string but capitalized. I believe. Sure why? I guess that's just their convention. Does anybody know why that has to be?
Nope.
Okay, moving on. So yeah, that's our documentation. Otherwise, you can have like nice examples in here and do whatever you like. Conventions. Okay, so I'll go back to the full code quickly here. You'll notice that I was coming at this initially from like a Rusty perspective or like Haskell 2, where it's like, okay, all errors are in the type system and like we can't crash because crashing is bad, and like errors or users don't want crashes. But it turns out that that is not the philosophy of Emacs. Is that crashes are good? Run with debug. Or activate the mode where any error that occurs will give you the full backtrace. So it's not actually that big of a deal to find out where a problem was. Losing audio struggling?
Yeah, it's getting worse over time.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, I'll just keep an eye on that.
What?
I'll keep an eye on things here. Anyway, if there's an error, it's the Emacs way to just crash, to just send errors. Really care about how it crashed. You open up you turn on that debugging mode, and then you get the full stack. That's because I'm not Australian. Oh, you probably meant Tekka if he was speaking. Anyway. Right, so we just error. Initially, I was trying to just be clever, returning nils, because nil is kind of the way that you signal that something was wrong in languages like this. But apparently, no, that was not good, and people were very mad about nil. So it's like, okay, I'll just crash. We have to write unit tests. So in Emacs, every Lisp file that there is has a corresponding file under a test directory. So files.el has a testing file under in the path that you can see right here. And Here's one of the unit tests that I added. Fairly, yeah, exactly, right? That Emacs would have unit tests. They're built right in, and I'm assuming that they run them in like their CI or whatever. It's basically what you'd be used to. You've got this kind of should stuff and string equal, and you just sort of, do what you like. It's what you would expect from a unit test. Here is how to run them. So, okay, you write or you update your unit test. You type G and then capital R to reevaluate the whole buffer. You can then run I probably won't do anything here. ERT run tests interactively. There won't even be anything in here. Yeah. ERT run tests interactively. On your unit tests file, that the completions menu would be filled with all your stuff. You can just auto-complete on the exact unit test you want to run. You hit enter. It opens up a little side buffer which tells you how you did. If there were errors, as usual, it would tell you what your errors exactly were, and then you can either fix your unit tests or fix your code. Fairly straightforward. There was some sort of batch way to run them all. I actually couldn't figure out how to do it. This was this interactive way was how it went, which was fine because I was really only trying to and not test all of Emacs. How's the audio?
No issues so far.
It's fine. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys.
I could not hear him ask that it's fine, but I heard everything up until that point.
Okay. Is Jira the normal Vim mode? I actually don't know. I'm actually not that good at Vim stuff. I kind of mostly like navigate. I have like a few specific wizard combinations, but very few, less than 5. I feel like there's a lot of Vim that I'm missing out on, but at the same time, whatever, I'll just write an Emacs list. Okay, so we've written our tests, we've written our code, we wrote our docs, we've written our tests. Great, our patch is perfect. Well, no, sorry, it's still not perfect because we have to update the fancy manual because Emacs has a fancy manual. And if, thank you, there's also like, yeah, that'd be the native Emacs way to do it, eval buffer. Our normal, like our doc string is what appears when we do space HF, but there's also the online manual, which is usually a little more detailed. So likewise, there's a file basically for every Lisp file that you could have that exists. There's a doctexy file for it. And I basically went in and looked at the syntax that the other ones were doing. It's not like I know this markup. I just looked at what the other ones were doing, kind of copied the format, showed some examples, and then we were off to the races. And then so this entry doesn't exist on the current published manual. Like if you went to it right now, you wouldn't find file name with extension. Because I guess what's published is still for Emacs 27, but once Emacs 28 is fully released, I assume that this will now be visible. I think that's fairly straightforward. Any questions to this point?
What would you say is the biggest
Oh, yeah.
bottleneck in the contribution process?
Oh, what was the biggest bottleneck?
Yeah.
I would say the back and forth, the fact that, but maybe this isn't unique to Emacs. It's the fact that if you've given anybody a PR and then the one maintainer says like, okay, that's great, and they thumb up it or whatever, and then there's just nothing for like a week, and then you're like, hey, like, so what's the status of this here? And so how you actually find out that your patch has been merged is that one of the merge gun on that thread and say, okay, this is now on master. There's otherwise no way to tell unless you're furiously refreshing the Git page that I showed before to see if your patch, like to see if your commit was actually included. So I would call that a disadvantage. There's a legal bottleneck coming up, although it wasn't that big of a deal, which has more pros than cons. So now we've updated the module docs, but now we have to update something called the short docs. And update this, I found that like whoever merged it added this to the patch. So this was something that both I and everybody who had chimed in overlooked until the actual merging person did this. So, and I only found out about this, these slides, and looking at the patch again. So there's something called short docs, which if you do short doc display group, okay, let's click enter. Now there's a bunch of completion names here. I guess Emacs list categories. The one we care about is file name. Now what this shows all of the functions with some little examples. Now the cool thing about this is that, okay, so here's file name with extension. Compare this just above that and compare what we see in the mini buffer here is that it's actually running these eval keyword there. So there you go. Yeah, right. Total TIL. I had no idea this existed. So this is kind of like, this is in between, I would say, in between the normal docs that you would get from HF and the manual. This is kind of like, okay, these are literal examples that are being run live. So you can see what literally comes out. So I wonder if this is what help is. Maybe hard to say. Can I close that? So what do we actually see in here? Okay, so none of the fanciness in the HF again. None of, like, this is just what I wrote basically. I don't see anything else. Yeah, that's right. The Doom examples come from some side package. So if you wanted those examples, you need to go make a PR against that external project. Okay, thanks a lot. See you later. Okay, so this is kind of handy for knowing exactly what specific API functions do. I think the difference between this and HF is that the short doc thing is specifically for what we could call the Emacs standard library. We're not done yet. Okay, we've updated, we made our patch, we've got our unit tests, we updated the module, we updated the short docs. Now we have to update the news file. Now, if you go into the news file, it is bloody massive. It's absolutely huge, and it took me a good amount of time to figure out where to even put my little entry here. I found the heading Lisp changes in Emacs 28. There were a few categories where it was like plausible that it could go there. Luckily, I found this one, and so I just added a little one-liner here. Ignore that little comma. That's just a weird kind of like of org mode. Flugo, that's a decent suggestion. Although, yeah, like it seems to only apply to the API functions. Like if we go to the short doc again, right? Short doc display group. I'm pretty sure these are just like built-in Emacs Lisp things, right? Hash table functions. Although one thing that this is really good for is it lets you know what the functions from that family even are. Like if you just want to know like what can I do to a hash map, instead of digging through HF or digging through the manual, you could go to the short docs and it just tells you. That'd be really useful. Okay, our patch is in theory done. We got it perfect on the first try, right? Oh, it's a Doom Techosaur? Maybe, I don't know. So, yeah, that could be helpful though, eh? Okay, now we're actually going to send our patch to the wizards, to like the bearded wizards. You know, Richard Stallman himself will look over our patch. Actually, he won't, but Fun fact, if you do a git short log on Emacs, who by far has the most commits? It's Mr. Richard Stallman by a significant amount. And then after that, it's, I think, some of the main maintainers that you might recognize. Okay, so sending patches, I thought was going to be some wizardry. I thought I was going to have to configure my email client in a certain way, or do this or do that, or like send the patch in a specific format. Like, you know how if you're exporting a GPG key, you have to like armor it and do all this crap? No, actually, it turns out you don't have to do any of that. You can literally just git diff file postfixed with patch, and then email that as a normal attachment. You just send a normal email attachment. You don't copy paste or anything. Email attachment of the file to the particular mailing list address. In like 15 minutes or half an hour, you'll see it on the actual archive list. And then from there, you can then, manically refresh, waiting for replies, or look for them in your email inbox. You haven't tried W in Magit. That's probably a patch submission thing. I have not done that. But I'll take a look. I actually recently broke my MU4E configuration. I accidentally deleted the elisp file, like an uncommitted elisp file that for some reason had my like outgoing SMTP config in it. And now I can't send emails anymore, so I have to redo that. I can receive emails just fine, but I can't send them anymore. So I have to fix that. So it seems like patches can be accepted on either list. And eventually the maintainers will get back to you, and then you can view the lists as you need. Okay, so you send it back, you get some responses, you'll get some back and forth. People will tell you you're an idiot. Not directly, but there may be some, like, especially from Germans, there will usually be some like this is wrong, please fix, in like very like. But I think it's all for the good, because it keeps Emacs working, and like this is a long-term project, right? This isn't just like some weekend hype thing. Emacs has been running, it's still going, and we want it to keep going. So I understand that that we want to get things right, and one part of getting things right is signing the copyright agreement. So if your patch is longer than 20 lines or so, that's kind of the eyeballing number. If you're like not just fixing a typo or whatever, you have to sign the copy. You have to assign copyright of the code to the Free Software Foundation. The reason for this is so that like people can't sue you or them for your contributions. Like for whatever reason, if you were like writing code on the company clock or something, and then that company was like, oh well, we own whatever code you produced, therefore we own the patch you made, and so like we own Emacs or some bullshit. No, instead of like getting you for that, they would come up. Your code basically comes under the legal protection of the FSF. Assigning copyright wasn't that big of a deal. You fill out the template above and you email it. For me, a nice man named Craig sent me a message back with a personalized kind of like paper that's got your name and everything. Print it out, sign it, rescan it back as a PDF, send it back to them, and then some amount of days later, they get back to you. It's been signed on their end, and then you now have a PDF, and we are now like legally immune to any code-related problems. And that's kind of like getting you in the door for further development, because now in theory I could throw up patches willy-nilly to Emacs if I so wished. And they could, go in no problem as long as they were good enough. Now, like I was saying before, eventually someone will tell you, oh, by the way, we merged this, and then you'll be able to see it in the actual on that page I showed before. And then congratulations, you've got it. You've got your code into Emacs. I also found out about this relatively recently, is that there is an Emacs newsletter, which this person's putting a lot of effort into. It's kind of like a link aggregation thing for everything to do with Emacs, and that's where I found out about a few, like meetups and things like that. But they also post if there have been any major contributions, or just any contributions. Recently, there's a section for that. Hey, your patch will have its 15 minutes of fame in that week's Emacs newsletter. Okay, that's it. Great. We contributed to Emacs. It took about a month, but like it didn't have to. If it was quicker, it would go in quicker, and if it's a smaller patch, it goes in quicker. But if you have any questions, let me know. And yeah, Danny is kind of right that like, okay, like I did actually technically get my code into June at the end of the day because I took it to the Supreme Court, so to speak, and got it in there. So
It's a long way around.
Yeah, that should be it. If there's no other questions, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Okay. So since Hazel was like vetoed anyone else, so sure. No Hazel.
Okay. I mean, yeah. Hi. Can y'all hear me all right?
Yeah.
And I don't know how to. Okay. And also I need to actually figure out how to screen share. So.
Yeah, I have a question. Yeah, about that. Foskers, you were like reading chat while you were doing the screen share. Do you have like a second monitor? Or is there like some sort of better way to do that?
I have two monitors. I was sharing my one screen that had my Emacs on it. My second one had my GatherTown open, and I had the chat open, so I could just see it. And it was also very aggressively binging in my ear, telling me that there had been a new message. So that was decent incentive.
Yeah. Okay.
So
you can turn the noise off if it bothers you. By the way, at the gear at the top.
Okay.
Just for the speaker and for everyone.
Right. Also, one thing is that well, couple of things. First off, is that this is a distilled version of a talk that's. When I say distilled, better term is unfinished version of a talk that is being presented at the Scheme Workshop at ICFP. So if you like this, you should go watch that version in like 2 weeks. And also, my computer occasionally just prompts me for like a third screen share sometimes. Like it prompts twice when I try to screen share, and then like while I'm screen sharing at like some random point, it'll prompt a third time. And this is probably some weird thing with GNOME and Firefox and Pipewire that I literally just do not feel like fixing. So if I'm talking like I'm changing slides, and I have not changed slides, yell at me. Okay. So
can I make
in
the
addition,
font bigger?
Oh no. This is just running it.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
This is gonna take a bit because it's to read a bunch of files from disk and whatnot. But so I am also I also have an unconventional means of presenting because this talk is an executable Racket program. So yeah. So today I'm going to be talking about Graphite Library for Data Visualization. This is joint work with Sam Tobin Hochstadt. We are both of Indiana University, and I am his student. And I need to wait for the slides to change because it has not finished reading the aforementioned files from disk. So Graphite is a Racket library for drawing statistical plots based on the grammar of graphics, which is a philosophy of layering graphics that's really popularized by the R library ggplot2, which maybe some of you have used, or if not, you've probably seen plots generated by it in like the New York Times or whatnot. So let's take a look at some data. So we're going to read in the Gap Manager data set, which is various like summary statistics about various countries in different years, right? So for example, this data set is read in a tabular fashion called a data frame. And we can say that in Afghanistan in the year 1952, there was a life expectancy of 28.8 years, right? Because each row corresponds to a single observation. So there exists a Racket library called Plot, which, well, is also designed for making statistical plots. And so Plot is reasonably good. But the problem is that its reasoning is not very well integrated with the data. if you look at the code on the left, you can see we're manually making a fit line. You can see we're using a hash table and a for loop and mutability and all of this nonsense to get the thing on the right. So let's see how we would do it with Graphite. So we start off by reading in the data directly in its tabular form and mapping the X variable to the GDP per capita and the Y variable to life expectancy. We also
Wait,
give it the...
no, just minor question, like the hashtag, fuck, 2 dots, how do you call them? Colon. Yeah, that's like a keyword argument in record syntax?
That is a keyword argument.
Gotcha.
Yes. And yeah, if you want to ask a question, actually do interrupt me. I am not looking at chat. So we map those, and then we also give it the positional argument points, which is a renderer that draws some points. And so if you were a statistician, you may want to de-densify this plot by adding a logarithmic transform on the x-axis. This is pretty crunched together. Graphite makes that easy with a single keyword change, as well as changing various visual elements of the plot with similar keyword changes, renderer by renderer. So we can say add the x transform, logarithmic transform, and add a point alpha 0.4. Furthermore,
so is logarithmic transform special, or is it just any old function that maps some value to another?
It's a struct. It is a struct of ticks information and an invertible function, which is also a struct that is just a function and its inverse. Because that is basically like the invertible function stuff is something that the plot library was already doing, so it's that way for interoperability, basically. So it's not a regular function, but you can definitely create them, right? In addition, we can change various aesthetic elements and map them to variables. Here, we map the discrete color aesthetic for the points renderer to the variable constant, and this splits the color of each point based on the possibility of the variable consonant, right? In addition, renderers work in an additive fashion, and we can have multiple of them. So we can add a fit renderer, and it draws a fit line, right? So this is looking really similar to the code, to the image that we had with plot, and it is. Namely, we went from this code to this code. We went from 41 lines of code to 18 lines of code. But more crucially, we had way less cognitive load in that construction. What?
Oh yeah, just a quick question about, can you go to the previous slide?
Right.
Just had a question about argument order.
Mm-hmm.
Presumably, I mean, maybe it's like what, like you put fit in where you put it, but did it have to go there? Like, are we expecting specific positional arguments?
It does it in an additive fashion. So what happens is the things that like go first get literally like stacked on top graphically. Like it's a little bit hard to see because of contrast, but you can note that the fit line is above the points. If we were to put it under the points positionally, it would be, well, below the points.
Oh, this is literally just like a stack of arguments, presumably just maybe just like a var arg.
Yes.
And it's just executing. Oh, gotcha. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So we went from 41 lines of code with plot to 18 lines of code with Graphite, and more importantly, the Graphite code closely mirrored like the statistical reasoning that you would want to do while creating a visualization. We didn't have to worry about the implementation details like that nasty hash table and having a list in there and manually making our fit line because Graphite abstracts that away. In addition, Graphite is capable of various things that plot alone is not capable of. For example, we can map a special aesthetic facet to the variable consonant, and this will split it up on various subframes, each corresponding to one iteration of those renderers. Yes, I know the centering is slightly off. I'm working on it. It's a very annoying bug. But regardless. So let's try and grab some more extrapolations from this data. Namely, let's try and make a time series of year versus GDP per capita. So, well, we map the X variable to year and the Y variable to GDP per capita. And we use the lines renderer, which draws some lines, as well as mapping the color to country. This is kind of a giant mess. We have this giant nest of color, and there's no real meaningful way of making an extrapolation from this. So we can split it up on continent, and now we have 5 different subframes, each corresponding to each continent. This is still pretty unenlightening though, mostly because one, we have this giant mess of color, and two, we note that like extremely rich countries in like the 1960s are dwarfing those at the bottom. Again, graphite makes that change easy by simply adding a log transform and changing the color. Note that I have a discrete color mapping to the variable country, and also I'm overriding that with gray. This is largely just to show that, well, we can do that. Like, the entire thing is designed to compose additively. So having the color be gray here means that we can retain like that old information without having to comment it out or overwrite anything. And finally, we can add a fit line, and again, it performs in that additive fashion. So the problem is that this data set is relatively cherry-picked. Namely, the gapminder data set is pretty much designed, like, it's used a lot in introductory data science because it's very pretty data that you can very easily visualize. And not all data is like that. Frankly, the overwhelming majority of data is not like that. So Sawzall is a racket library for data manipulation that's designed to work with graphite. Namely, it's like map, filter, fold, all of the traditional functional programming functions that you're used to, but for tabular data. And it's designed to be compositional with the threading operator, which I know Mona is continually trying to add something to that to Haskell. So notably, for the purposes of Sawzall, we kind of want a categorical foothold. So we're going to read in the GSS, or General Social Survey from 2016, which has various different categorical variables that we can then like split upon. Namely here, again, all of these are individual level observations from people who responded to the survey. So we start off with our individual level data saying, okay, we have a person in the Northeast who has no religion. We have a person in the Northeast who is a Catholic. And then we want to try and summarize that, right? So we're trying to create a data manipulation pipeline for Sawzall that can then be fed into a data visualization or something else. So we can start off by creating summary statistics, somewhat like a fold, where we can say, okay, there are 172 Catholics in the Midwest. There are 3 Jews in the Midwest that responded to the survey, rather. And we can then take that data and then create percent religious preference by that census region. And again, Sawzall works in a compositional fashion that makes this as easy as possible. So we can start off by grouping by the variables big region and religion. Note that the ID column is slightly off. This is because of an internal detail of the starting. And what that does is it basically says subsequent operations should work within big region and then work within religion, right? We can then use aggregate, which is somewhat similar to a fold, where we create a new variable count that depends on the variable big region and is computed to be the length of the vector big region. So this can say that we can grab all of the Catholics in the Midwest and just reduce it to a single value representing, well, the count. We can then take that, and we've managed to get through the first pipeline in our data, so we can then take this and attempt to get the percent religious preference. So we can start off by saying, okay, create a new variable frequency where we divide every element of the variable count by the sum of the entire vector. So what this is doing is binding the variable count as a vector and dividing each element by its sum to get frequency. And in addition, we can say, okay, make a new variable percent that depends on the new variable frequency and multiplies it all by 100. Note that we bind count as a vector in the first clause and frequency as an element in the second clause. The first one just creates a new vector entirely out of it, whereas the second one maps over the data. And both of these are relatively close to what we want to do. These are where my slides end right now. Again, this is quite literally unfinished, but I am very happy to answer any questions as well as show any demos that anybody would like to see.
I would like to see a demo, because honestly, I kind of want to use this as like an alternative to doom-plot, because I've never managed to figure out how the hell GNU-plot works. Like, how easy is using it outside of as a racket library?
Okay, so let me change the font size in Emacs. Also, my stall echoes splash screen. Sorry.
Wait, what? What is?
You can also do Control+.
Yeah, I know. The difference is that doing this sets it for the entirety of Emacs, whereas.
Wait, what is this font picking thing? Is that like a thing that Techo made?
No, I stole the script. I stole the splash screen.
Oh no,
That's
it's
just,
splash screen, right? How do you wait?
Yeah.
Is that font thing built into Emacs?
Yes, MX menu set font.
Amazing.
You learn something new every day. It's ridiculous.
I know.
We learn something new every 5 minutes.
So I guess here's an example. So let me load this up. So we can start off with the Anscombe's quartet, which is a famous statistical counterexample, right? Where basically each X1, Y1 pair has really similar summary statistics, right? So what we can do is use Sawzall to create a pipeline, right? In order to make this something that Graphite can then facet on. So what we do is we create, we take this data, right? Which starts off the way we have it. And we can insert an introspect into the pipeline here in order to, well, introspect on that data. And we can see that in that point in the pipeline, we have, well, actually that doesn't show us anything because of, that doesn't show us anything because it's hiding some columns because of wrapping. But if I were to do that, then we notice that we have this new column and row, which is effectively just something to join on. Because we want each XY pair to join at the end. So if we then take that, we take every column but n row and then take all of the names of each variable to a new column called name and the values to a new column called val. And we can say, okay, or we have y2 is val in what was row 0, 8.14 in what was row 1. And we want to split this up into XY pairs. So that basically what we want to get is some kind of categorical variable that we can then split on. So if we take the X1, Y1 pair, right? We want to split that up into an X or Y and a quadrant, where quadrant is what we're going to be fastening on. So we can literally split up that variable into two different variables called X or Y and quadrant. We can say, okay, this was Y2, now it's Y and 2. And then we can turn those X and Ys into different variables. So we can take this X or Y column and take all of these and turn them into names. And now we have, okay, in quadrant 1, we have a XY pair of 8.04 and 10. We have a pair of 6.95 and 8. And this is something we can then feed directly into data visualization. So what we do is we take in the tabular data that we had, at the x-axis to x, y to y, facet to quadrant, and then draw points in a fit line. And we end up with this. I have a couple more examples if those are either necessary or useful, but yeah.
What about interactivity?
So I mean, if you were to load this, if you're using racket mode, for example, if you have this code, then I can say show or show And that all happens in the REPL. In addition, one really cool thing about Racket is that Racket has images in the REPL, including an Emacs. So if I do graph data facetable, let's say we don't know that we want to do a facet yet and we just draw some points, then that image will literally just show directly in the REPL out the gate.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. And it's not ASCII.
That's not ASCII. And this happens in both Emacs and Dr. Racket, which, by the way, Dr. Racket has no right being as good as it is. And again, we can just add stuff to this, and then we can add a facet. And again, that's all just happening like straight in the REPL. So in terms of interactivity, this is one of the things that makes Racket a really good choice for this kind of stuff in my mind, is just because a lot of like data science tooling, like R Studio, has all of these like functionalities for directly integrating with your plot. And the fact that we're able to do that just out the gate is really cool. Anyway, so any other questions or?
And widgets and like stuff that you can slide around to change the plots, is that something that would be easy to add?
Sorry, what?
Imagine you had a slider, for example, that you would use to change, say, the slope of the curve or whatever.
Right.
That changes the plots.
So that would be actually relatively easy with Racket GUI, but you would have to redraw the plot on each slider change. The regular plot library has interactivity features. So if you're really looking for interactivity, I would honestly say go use that instead, especially if you're using like something programmatic. But it is definitely possible, and if you're looking for a quick prototype, then yeah, for sure. But not like out the gate in the REPL, probably not. I do believe the Dr. Racket REPL, not the Emacs REPL, has like mix-ins where you can have like actual like GUI elements in your REPL. So if you're looking to prototype, then that is definitely a thing that exists. But yeah, interactivity was kind of off the cards for this, for the sake of simplicity. But it is theoretically possible, yeah.
Cool.
Okay. So that was not Emacs related at all. Aside from the fact that I use Emacs and maybe like 3 people mentioned like Emacs menu set font. But yeah, hope that was something.
I mean, I ranted about D for half an hour, so I don't think our criteria is Emacs related. But I'm very glad you ended up presenting after all, because that was super interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I am so tired.
That was amazing. That was really awesome.
Woo!
Yeah.
I wasn't sure what to expect with this. Yeah, that was great.
Thank you. I mean, there's a lot of polish that needs to go into that talk before I do it at ICFP, especially because I literally just don't have the slides done. Right? But,
Yeah, I mean, the main problem was when you stopped, because it was all going so well up to that point.
yeah.
Yeah, there was some.
Yeah, no, the
comments in chat
slides
here.
themselves are fine. It's just they're not done, so then I kind of had to like steer off of that.
Right. So I think that the people that have a thing left are me and Techo, right?
Yeah, and my script's just finished running, making some content. Now I need to make some slides with it. So if you mind going while I make slides, that would be great.
Yeah, just give me like half a minute because I had to run and go and move my car, so I'm slightly out of breath. Yeah.
No problem.
How's everyone doing? I can buy you some time. Everyone enjoying the conference? DoomCon 2021?
DoomCon August.
Pretty good.
DoomCon August, that's right. Could be more.
Pretty good. I don't know if my audio is working or not.
So when are we gonna have another one of these?
Like Henrik said he wouldn't mind doing like a State of Doom talk after he's done with the August sprint. So presumably sometime after that could be like a cool thing to do. So I don't know, a few months.
All right,
Like-
yeah, maybe October then.
Yeah, maybe we'll see.
Yeah, we could make it like dependent on that, right? We could just ask him when
Yeah,
he feels
because
like giving it, and
I
then we
really-
organize around it.
Yeah, because like personally, I like hearing talks. You learn stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's figure out how to technologically share our screen. Can you see my screen? Wait, shit. Oh. Can you see this?
Yep.
Yeah? Okay, great. So hold up. I do not technically have a second monitor, but I do have a second computer because I'm on my laptop and I have my desktop right next to me. So I can actually like see the chat. But well, I mean, I'm totally fine with interruptions. And if you have like an actual question and not just like a drive-by comment, then feel free to interrupt me at any time that isn't when I'm like literally in the middle of a word. That's probably not great. Yeah, okay. So hi, I'm Monad from the Discord. I wrote most of the vertical module. I didn't write all of it, and I sort of wasn't the person that started working on it, but I did most of it. So sort of in an in-between situation there. So yeah, so I want to talk about a few things. One, I want to talk about generally like a few. Wait, what are all the dings? Keep hearing dings. What are those? Oh, right, the dings are the thing in the chat.
Yeah, you can turn
Shit,
those
how did
off.
I turn that off? Someone. Right. Okay, because chat moving is fine, but it's kind of distracting. So, yeah. Wait. Yeah. So anyway, so I want to talk a bit about well, basically, primarily like takeaways that I had from working on it, which might be useful to you if you ever want to do like a similar thing in the future. And yeah, it's gonna be pretty short and sweet. So, first of all, how do you start working on a major contribution to like a project, right? So this is an easy 3-step process. Step 1, have a paper that you need to write. Step 2, do not feel like writing that paper. Step 3, convince yourself that since it's not your own project, it's productive procrastination, which is literally the primary reason why I worked on this so much, because it was fun, right? So, because it started out, it started out by me like messaging Edmund, who's also in the audience. Hi, Edmund. Basically like, hi, I see that you're working on the module. Would you like to accept some non-documentation PRs? And few short months later, we got to whatever this is with like 150 commits and like hundreds of comments, and it was like a whole huge thing, right? Because sort of like by the time I realized how big of a thing it was like too late to change course. This was like a huge amount of fun, and importantly, you don't need to be like a super expert like Emacs person to do any of this. Because I mean, I'm entirely like self-taught as a programmer. I don't really have much in the way of knowing like conventional programming languages. Like I know some Haskell and some ELISP, and that is sort of, those are the only 2 programming languages I can write without like looking up docs all the time. Yeah, bye Hazel. So like you don't have to be like an Emacs wizard or anything. Like the major Emacs project I had before this was writing Evil Tech with Marco, and like most of that project was like me asking him how to do stuff with him explaining it to me, because that was I learned Ellipse doing that and learned a whole lot doing this. So not only you can sort of fall into doing that sort of thing, doing this sort of thing almost by accident, you don't have to wait until you feel like you know stuff, because learning by doing is like a huge thing that you can do. So I want to talk about some key takeaways. Priority one is making whatever you're working on dog foodable, because the main reason why Edmund stopped working on it, at least to my understanding, one moment, is that I think it was like some issue with like the project management or stuff like that, and like a bunch of like annoying paper cuts that made it like unusable. And if you're like using Ivy all day and you're only going to vertical every once in a while, you're never going to do anything. So before doing anything cool, you need to make sure that you can comfortably live in like your fork, right? So that is like really important. The second thing is that you really want to maintain the to-do list / notes file. And just to understand the scale I'm talking about, when I started working on the project, this was more or less the to-do file. And by the time the PR got merged, it was this, right? Like it's not over yet. We just moved to the discourse because we don't want it like living in the vertical module. And basically the reason is because if you're working on like anything big, you can't like fit in all of the things in your head at the same time. Like half of this was just like things I wanted Henrik to be aware of, right? There wasn't even like problems where it's like, oh, this is a thing. Like you're not gonna remember all that. So like write a to-do file as early as possible and like throw anything you think might be relevant for future you in there. So yeah, the next bit is that the 80-20 rule. The 80-20 rule is like very, very, very real. I started working on this in April, and it was not super usable at that point. It was usable as like a daily driver by like mid-May, and I only applied for it to get merged in like mid-July, right? And the main reason for that is even though it was usable, there were a bunch of like small things that I need to take care of, and that took like a very long time. So like be wary of, I guess, thinking that you're almost done with something, but that is like, I assume everyone knows how that is. But yeah. Another important point is that you want to talk with like upstream people, and you want to upstream whatever you can if it's like applicable, right? Because I really lucked into the fact that like Minad, who is not me, even though we have a similar name, who maintains like half of the packages that we use. Like he maintains Vertigo, Consult, and Marginalia, and he like is a very heavy contributor to things like Embark and the other one, Orderless. Yeah. And he just like showed up on the, like, even before I started working on it, he just like followed the thread and like commented on it and provided a huge amount of like super good insight. And then like Techo basically like conned him into joining the Discord server. And like the people, like if you're like, you want to talk to these people as much as possible, and even if they don't do that, just like, I don't know, open issues, ask them about stuff, reproduce shit in Emacs queue, you know, and if you can like contribute stuff, then do that. This was a bit hard with these packages because a lot of them like require Emacs FSF assignment, and that is taking me like a very long time. But I did actually manage to get some Embark improvements. It like managed to fly under the 15 line, and I also like wrote a tiny like wrapper script thing to add like icons to Vertigo and Marginalia and stuff, which is like totally like does not have anything to do with Doom, so it's just like there for people to use. So yeah, so just like this is like an important thing to think about, because like the default is just to stick everything in Doom, and like some things are useful to people that don't use Doom, so you probably want to do that. The next point is that I have no idea how you do this, but you somehow need to get beta testers. I think I sort of lucked into this because just people were like excited to use the selector or vertical module, so there were like a bunch of people that were using it. I think that like before we got merged, there were like 5 to 7-ish people that I knew about. There were like a bunch of like lurkers that never said anything, but like they seemed to follow like the PR thread or something like that. So I don't know how many people, but that was really useful because I found like a bunch of bugs that way, because other people have different workflows. Honestly, the most important thing, in my opinion, that you want to merge as soon as possible, because like Henrik sort of surprised me with like, oh cool, I'm just gonna merge this now. I was like, but wait, I still have stuff left to do. But like the moment that you merge it, like other people can like way more easily work on it, and you can always like send more things later. So like originally in my head I was like, yeah, that too. Originally I was like, oh right, yeah, like about my accent. Yeah, sorry, my mom's American, so fuck you. But yeah, so basically, fuck, I lost my train of thought. No, it's, right. Anyway, yeah. So because like in my head, I wanted to like have the to-do file like actually properly finished, and it's still not. Like you can look it up on like the Emacs discourse. There's still like a bunch of stuff there. But like if it's usable and like doesn't have any major bugs, like it's way easier to do that, because like a bunch of other people like work on it. Like Techo like made a bunch of like really cool like contributions to make it prettier and stuff like that, and it was infinitely easier for him to do that once it was actually in Doom and not in like a separate branch, right? So like merge it literally as soon as you possibly can. You trust me, it's a good idea. And also, this is kind of like a side rant that other people like probably saw in the Discord because I complained about it, is that GitHub like really sucks for huge PRs. Like if you ever like go to the vertical PR thread, like you have to click on like a button a million times in order to like expand all the comments. You can't just like expand all. It's like I think the review UI is like really kind of subpar because it's sort of like, because it means that like if there's like a new comment but it's like in a review subthread, then it's like all the way up there because there isn't like any sort of like chronological order thing. And like part of this can be solved if you use email, but the problem is people edit like GitHub comments a lot, so you can't really use that. So the best you can do is like use the email to navigate to the correct place on the GitHub page, but that's only good if you've been following the thread for the whole time. It's all just kind of like a huge mess, and I sort of wish it would be better. And I don't really have a solution for that one, but maybe like something to be aware of. But honestly, I would recommend like avoiding gigantic, huge PRs like this as much as you possibly can for the whole merging early reason. Unfortunately, like with Vertigo, there were like actual proper bugs with it until it was like ready for review, so I didn't feel comfortable doing that. But yeah, if you can avoid that and like work on it incrementally, easily, the way better to do with it. Does Magic Forge help with what? With like living on like PRs? Okay, no, it doesn't, unfortunately, because the thing is that the bit with the comments in Magic Forge only works for like proper comments. It doesn't really work for reviews. So like I never use that because I always feel like I'm going to like maybe like miss out on some stuff, and I don't want to like miss comments that people say. So I just dealt with it, and like I generally just had like a tab open like at all times with all of the like with it expanded all the way there, and you know, you just live. But it's just, I don't know. I feel like if the whole thing was built around like an Emacs, like an email centric workflow, then it would be better because people like wouldn't edit. They would like send follow up emails or whatever, and it would be like way easier to navigate and stuff like that. But you know, like until like, you know, in 2026 when like Doom moves to Source Hut or whatever, we're kind of stuck with this. So, well, yeah, no, yeah, it's just like that's already an issue there. It's just, I think, like pretty hard to implement, and no one has done that yet. But yeah, it would be definitely like a super cool thing to do if anyone wants to bother with that. Like, I don't know, it's yeah, because you know, the more you can live in Emacs, the better. Like, especially with anything relating to text. So yeah, so thanks. That is. Yeah, that is, that is like most of what I had talked. I had like a blast writing the module. It was like really fun. I learned a whole lot about Emacs, like stuff that I probably should have already known, but I only did because I was busy like reading through the manual and reading through like the docs and stuff like that. And I don't know, it's like there's something very fun about contributing like a thing to a larger project and seeing it out there in the wild. And also now I'm the maintainer of the module, which is a fun thing. And I'm not really done working on it. Like, you know, right now there's like a PR into Doom of like various improvements, and there'll probably be another one in like 2 weeks. And part of the reason is because like the ecosystem is still pretty new, so there's like a bunch of changes that like someone needs to keep track of, and I'm in a way better position to do that than Henrik has like a million other things to do. So I know it's a thing that's happening. Right. What I'm most proud of. I'll tell you what, I think that unfortunately, due to the type of thing that this is, like, I think, like, Flugo, I think if you just say something, I should be able to hear you. But like, just the thing that I'm most proud of is just, like, the ecosystem of packages is like very good, and like the vast majority of the work was not like really anything like specifically flashy. It was like making sure all of the pieces like fit together correctly. So there isn't like really one big thing there. It's sort of like the fact that it works properly. Oh yeah, sure, I can do a demo. But like the fact that it like works properly and like without really any noticeable issues for the most part is something that I'm really proud of, honestly, because that it took a lot of work. So yeah, if you want like a demo of the module in action, yeah, sure. Here we have like the, yeah. Okay. So first of all, this thing is default in Doom. Like if you already have like, because Henrik like really likes the ecosystem, and I agree with him because honestly, I looked a bit into Ivy and I was like, I don't know, this is a lot. This is complicated. Like because of the way like the vertical module like works, you have to deal with like way less stuff. So So it was also like really easy to work from like a development perspective. But like, you know, if you like, for example, like if you like try and call functions, then you know, just you have this, right? And you have like coloring, and you have this thing, which should probably be actually documented in the README because it's not super obvious what these letters mean. And the only place that it's really documented is either in like an obscure place in like the Emacs manual that you wouldn't know where to look if it didn't tell you, or if you literally go to like to the marginalia docs and a comment. So that should probably be in the Doom README. I forgot about that. But yeah, so you can do, yeah. So like for example, here you have like files, and like I don't know, you go to modules, you go to let's say you go for Vertigo, right? So say this is actually a workflow that everyone should probably use, and I don't use it enough. But like you know how sometimes if you're like looking through a bunch of stuff, then you will like say, oh, okay, then we go here, then oh, we do it again. We do like space and like single quote to do it again, and then we like go to another one and stuff like that because you're like looking through all the options. This sucks. Don't do this. What you actually want to do is you want to do that. You want to search for Vertigo or whatever. And then you do Control C, like Control semicolon, and it doesn't work. Fantastic. Vertigo. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Then it exports it to like a grep buffer, and then you can like just like go to the buffer and you can go to the things. You don't have to open and close all the time. And if you want to close it, you can quit it. And then if you do space B, capital B to get like all of the hidden buffers and stuff, you can go back to it, and then you can like. Then you can like open more stuff and things like that. And this is like a much like if you ever find yourself like repeating a command over and over, then a lot of times it would be better to export it, like keep it around in a buffer rather than doing the command over and over again. Especially due to the fact that like if you go to the async commands, which are the ones that have like this hashtag here, because it's async because like it's not Emacs doing anything, it's Emacs asking ripgrep to do a thing. Then Vertigo will not save like your position there. So if you want to actually save your position, you want to export it. And it's generally like a good idea. Pref C, like if you want like a rating out of 10, then I don't know, 10. Had fun. I really like it. It was a project that I really enjoyed working on, and I learned like a huge amount about Emacs. Flugo, you said earlier that you had like something specific you wanted to ask, or?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that have piled up now in various levels of seriousness. So first, the comment, I mean, it's been said a lot, but you've done a really good job, and I was one of the mid to early or late, I don't know, dog fooders back in the Selection days, and it's been smooth sailing.
Yeah,
from the beginning, and it was very polished early on. So the non-serious question is if you have any lingering hopes of getting a better name for the module, or
I don't know if you're aware, but like the SpaceMax guys, like they So if you don't know, like sometime after I started working on it, like people in SpaceMax, like someone there like wanted to go to the module, and also if you're unaware, like way back I wanted to this module used to be like based on Selectrum, and now it's based on Vertigo because basically for a few reasons. One, Selectrum is like weirdly buggy, and not only that, it's functionally unmaintained at the moment. Like the person that like is the main maintainer of it, like they started working on, like basically handed the torch to someone else who like maintained it for a while. That person like dropped off of the face of the planet in April. I have no idea what happened to them, and it feels weird to ask because it's kind of rude. And like Minad, who like wrote Vertigo, he has like commit rights. We like will fix stuff here and there, but there are like a few issues there where it's either like I fix it or no one does at this point at least. And Vertigo used to have less features, but now it doesn't. So there's like literally no reason to use Selectrum over Vertigo. Like it's just extra maintenance burden. And while I was moving on, I was like, well, half the point of this module is that like you have like a bunch of modular parts, right? So you want naming it after like a thing that might change later is maybe not a good idea. So I wanted to come up with a different name, and we had like a long bike setting session on the Discord, and we came up with this name that I really like called Complicius, which is like a ship of Theseus joke, which I love. But unfortunately, Henrik said the thing, and like it hurts me to admit, but he's probably right, that it's kind of a confusing name because if it's not written anywhere other than in the do module name, then like people have no idea what it is, and it's kind of confusing. So it's probably best to call it Vertigo because people presumably already know what that is. But during like the later time when I was working on the module for Doom, like people in SpaceMax, like some person there was like, oh, I wanted to like module, so here I'm gonna like write like a half-finished thing that the community can improve it. and like Minad, who liked the name, like recommended it to them. They're like, oh my god, cool. And because SpaceMax people don't have like a central authority, like person who's super present, like to like make design decisions, like no one mentioned the points. They're like, oh cool, just called Complesis now. So much in true fashion of how, due to the fact that SpaceMax is in GPL3 and we're in MIT, they can take our stuff, but we can't take their stuff. So they have the name now. So
when you love something, you have to let it go, right?
Yeah. I'm not bitter.
But I had another. So I was thinking about this thing of contributing a huge PR and how it doesn't really work. I'm just wondering if it's kind of a cascading effect that Doom is on the develop branch, kind of officially, and maybe later on when we have like an actual master branch, then maybe Henry can merge things a bit earlier to the develop branch where things aren't really promised to be fully working, and then maybe this will help with this kind of thing.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that at all, but I mean, yeah, that's a good point.
So
like, if develop is like expected to be like on the bleeding edge and not super work 100%, then like you can probably get away with things not super working all the time. So yeah, that's actually a good point. Yeah, totally.
Because I mean,
I hope,
and it's one of the promises, right? That for 3.0, I guess is the number.
Yeah.
We'll go back to having a master branch.
Yeah, and like I don't know how much like everyone is like checking in on like the Emacs discourse, but like an interesting thing that like is written in like the roadmap is that like Doom is sort of going to get split up a bit. Like you're going to have like the Doom core with like actual like specific versions, and then you will have like all the rest of the modules in like a calendar versioning thing, and then like the docs and like a separate thing. Which basically means that like the release is going less to like towards wait forever to like put thing, and more just like maybe once a month or once every 2 months, or I have no idea. So hopefully if anyone here wants to ever like, I don't know, write a not much module or whatever, if you start working on that late enough, then you can just like sort of like slowly incrementally put it in, and if it's like not ready, you can even like skip a like a master release and like live on develop for like a few releases until it's like ready for prime time. Which is totes awesome.
Cool, thanks.
So anything else or about the Doom user repository, there have been like minor like talks of like maybe having like contrib modules or something like that, which would be like a pretty good thing to have for things that are maybe like not quite ready to like be actually included in Doom, but maybe people want to like work on collaboratively or whatever, because like I mean I started working on I like started working on this by basically like submitting like pull requests to Edmund's branch, and then like way too late I was like, hey Edmund, can you just give me commit trace? And he was like, oh yeah, forgot about that. But so in theory, if there's like a Doom like contrib thing, then like people can just like it's like sanctioned as like people can just like send contributions, something like that. So maybe, I don't know, it's something to talk about after 3.0. Because before that there's like a million other things to do. But honestly, I think it would be probably be a good idea. Even though I don't really have anything specific, I think I would want to go there. But like you first make it, and then like people come. So yeah, it's probably gonna be a good idea. It's a good point, because then like it would be way easier to beta test stuff without like Henrik having to review it. But SpaceMax develop is still hundreds of commits behind, I assume, master or whatever. Like SpaceMax is like Doom, where like develop is like thousands of commits like ahead of master, and like Doom is like tens of thousands. So I'm not super sure what you mean. But wait, no, yeah. So I mean, I don't know. It's like I don't super mind like living on develop, because it honestly doesn't break that often. But I don't know. For people.
No, but the point is that I mean, no users go for the instructions, right? So what was happening there was people were getting together and saying, well, packetx is not working, it's showing me some error and so on. And we were always telling people to switch to develop, and that was a bit of a pain.
Yeah.
Why is it murdering people? Very loud?
It's super loud. It's like, sorry.
Hang on.
Yeah.
How about now?
Oh my god, that is like so much better. How did you do it?
Yeah, it's the magic technology of headsets. But I thought I thought SpaceX had a new release while we didn't.
No, it didn't. It's still like on 0.200 and like waiting for 0.300. It's
wow,
like
that's when I left. But anyway,
Yeah.
the idea is that eventually we're going to have some sort of Doom 3, right? And
Yep.
we're going to ask people to use that, or whoever is going to come in is going to use that by default, and then this situation where developer is so far ahead that master no longer keeps up with the packages is something that we should avoid, because it creates so many problems to new users.
Yeah, I know. Honestly, I kind of want to know like how it got like that, but I think that's a thing to maybe ask after like 3.0 is behind us already, because I don't know. But yeah. Yeah. Oh, also, just while I have the floor, just Flugo. Like, if you want to know what an Israeli accent sounds like, it kind of sounds like this. I'm not super good at actually doing one, because I have to like consciously try it, but I don't know. Maybe
I was expecting.
Yeah. So I mean, I think like Marco has like a bit of like an actual accent. So maybe when he comes back, you can like interrogate him in a way that is like super not awkward, you know. So yeah. So Teco,
Otherwise,
are
a
you
native
like
Hebrew speaker.
who? What? Again? Hello? Someone say something?
I think Colin asking if you're otherwise a native Hebrew speaker.
Oh yeah, no, like I mean I'm Israeli, you know, like so is Marco. You know, so yeah, big time. So yeah, you know. So I think the only person that has like a thing left is Teco, right?
Yeah,
He will be AFK for 30 seconds. Oh yeah, the thing about Teco is that like with Israeli sounding kind of French, I think this is only something that I think because I don't speak French, but I always thought like in English, like an Israeli accent and a French accent sounds like pretty similar. Like if any of y'all ever like watched The Boys, the guy that plays Frenchie is Israeli, and he like does a French accent, which I'm sure if like I don't know Gagbo was here, he would tell us like is a terrible like not authentic like French accent or whatever. But like to my untrained ears, like yeah, I can tell how he does that. So so yeah.
And I'm back.
Amazing. So, what is your thing actually? Because you never said what it was. Is this when like the 30-hour dynamic your config is going to start?
The proposal was for me to do a dramatic reading of my config. I now forget who actually made that interesting suggestion.
Yeah.
But you know what? Talking about my config, I spend hours doing it in the chat in the Discord anyway. So why not make some slides about it?
Awesome.
So there's something which I'm going to do here, which I'm disappointed that nobody other than Hazel did. We're talking about, I'm going to get the slides up now. We're talking about Doom Emacs, right? But so far, Hazel's been the only person, as far as I'm aware, to actually deliver said slides in Doom Emacs. So let's see that.
No, Fosker's did too.
No, but Foskers didn't do slides. He just did like the org file presentation.
Or
Teco, no, wait, Teco is like PDF files in Doom. Which,
okay, well, a bit fancy.
Yeah.
Right. So can everybody see slides?
Yep.
Fantastic. Let's give this a shot then. So, thinking too much about my config. Right. So I could do a dramatic reading of segments of my config, but when this was proposed, we actually did a rough calculation of how long this would take, and I think it ended up being something in the region of, was it just under a day? I think it might have been. Yeah, so I didn't think it'd be
what was under a day?
dedicated. The time it would take me to do a dramatic reading of my config. It was either just under a day or just under a week. I forget which.
It was just under a day. Yeah.
There we go. So while you're all here because you're interested in Doom, I don't think you're all sufficiently interested in my config. So we're going to try a slightly different approach here. So let's see how my config has developed over the past year. Why not? So for starters, we can have a little look at this from the point of view of file extensions. So you can get a picture here. There are a few things which have suddenly sprung up into existence, like my SAS files, some elif files scattered around, a bit of Python, that sort of thing. But there's one predominant, let's see, sort of org green line, which you can see just continues creeping up, slightly concerningly, you might say. And yeah, that's the length of my config.org. So let's see what's happening with that. So if you have a look at the proportional changes to my org file over the past, year and a half now, it looks like there's noise at the beginning and then it quietens down. The concerning thing here, though, is that if you look past about July in the first year, it actually looks pretty similar in terms of the sort of usual heights of the bars. Now, the reason why this is concerning is because this isn't actually an absolute difference. This is a proportional difference. So this means that my config is growing at about the same rate. What is that rate? Well, let's go back to that one later. So if we actually look at the distribution of the proportional changes to my org file length, then you see that it's actually fairly consistent in terms of the rate at which it's growing. We can zoom in on that region and see that although most of the time not much is happening, you see the yellow line here, this is the mean, it seems to be growing at around 2% per day, which is concerning, as I said. I don't know where my time is going in a completely unrelated note. So how's this going? Well, if you have a look here, I've managed to split this up by day, and it looks like I have absolutely no self-restraint, which is unfortunately, well, no surprise whatsoever. Basically, every day of the week that I have made a commit, it's a pretty even spread. There's slight differences, but really it's consistent. I think the problem here really lies in the fact that I use Emacs most days, and I usually find something that I want to tweak, modify, improve, that sort of thing, basically whenever I'm using it. Now, how does it actually manifest with respect to my config? So for this, we need to go a bit deeper. Oh, yes. So, and if you're wondering about the 2% day growth, how is that possible? This is part of your answer. So if you look at to do some sort of survival analysis on my actual config.org code base, it looks like the code I write overall has a half-life of about 2/3 of a year. So once every, let's say, 8 months on average, half of my config has been rewritten, which is interesting.
Wait, Techo. So what is like the rate of like? So 2% is like the rate of like commits, not the rate of like.
So 2% is based on the number of lines changed.
Wait. So what is the rate of new lines added to your config? Is that like also like an exponential thing, or?
New lines added would have to check separately. This is just based on lines changed.
Gotcha.
But actually, it would be added because if you have a look here, it also goes negative. So yeah, it's about 2% added.
Oh well.
Which you can sort of see if I go right back to the start. I mean, look at that green line. It just keeps on going up.
That's true. It does.
Yeah. So I mean, we've crossed the 10K line so far, but I really can't say when this is going to stop, which is not the conclusion I wanted. I would have quite liked to see it like sort of tailing off. That would be nice. So give me some confidence this is going to actually come to an end at some point. But no. But we don't need to stop here. We can go deeper. So if we have a look at individual comments, what we can do is I'd like to look at the concept of literacy as it applies to my config. So obviously, it being an org file, you've got the elist component and then the me chatting about what is going on in the elist component. And I thought it'd be interesting to have a look at how these two bits shift over time. So for the sake of that, I'm going to start off by cloning my repo to a temp folder. So let's shove it there. And then I'm going to actually show you some of the code which I'm using to do this, which is, of course, Julia, because that's been great as of late. Now, the next thing we're going to do is get all the commits and timestamps for those commits for this folder, which is a fairly straightforward git log with the appropriate format argument. And then I just get it to split these on new lines, reverse them to get it in the right time, and then do it for both comments and timestamps thanks to this lovely macro, which is a dot, which basically means that for every function following that macro, it actually sort of vectorizes it. So which is something which, if you're doing the sort of thing I am, and it's generally more like stats, working with data, that sort of thing, oh, this is lovely. So now I've got comments and timestamps. What we can do is we can basically reset the repo to each hash, tell Emacs to tangle my config file, replace all the generated cruft that happens in the .el file, and then count the number of lines both in my org and elisp config. And while that, it will also pull out the number of tangled blocks. So let's do that for every commit in my history, which is about 900 commits at this point. And then the tangling about past the, I think about the 600 or 700 commit line, it starts doing things like checking for system fonts and installed LaTeX packages during tangle. So this is why we had the repeated delaying for me where just wait, it's doing stuff. So yep, that I think took a bit over now, actually. Because yes, about 900 commits, and then a few hundred of them was checking all sorts of system information to change the generated code, that sort of stuff. But we've now got there. So what's the result? Well, I actually rather like this plot we've got here. So what I've done here is if you take the number of lines of elisp divided by org, 1 minus that, so higher value is more prose, lower value is more code, and look at how this has evolved over time. I started off great. It very quickly went quite bad as far as my standards go. And then I'm rather happy to say that since then, it's been sort of slowly trending upwards. So it's currently around the point where 40% of my config.org is prose, which is something I'm rather happy with. I think a big help's been when I've actually been splitting stuff out into packages, because otherwise, there would have been some massive chunks. So yes, you can basically see a few little bumps, which would basically be when I develop a feature and then split it off. So that's been fun doing. Now, I wonder if this ratio is based on size. And what's interesting here, if you look at the org and elisp generated sizes, it's much more of a much stronger linear relationship than I would have expected, which would make you think that as I'm writing org, I'm writing elisp, that's sort of happening at a similar rate. But there's another angle that we can actually look at this from, which is based on the code block size. So this is what I've found a bit more interesting, because you actually have a look at how much elisp code there is and how many code blocks that's distributed in. That's actually steadily growing as well. Separately to the actual total size of the config, the size of blocks has also been increasing. Now, what this does is leads us all to one conclusion. My config is becoming chunkier. It's becoming bigger, and it's got bigger blocks.
Wait, Teco?
So there we go. That is the conclusion of my short, let's see what my config's doing.
Can you go back a slide? Sorry.
Absolutely.
There was a big jump, right?
Yep. That was, let's see, around January this year.
Is that, do you know what happened?
That particular config? That particular commit? No, the refactor I mentioned actually happened recently. And the thing is that changed if you have a look at the refactor I did recently, you can see the effect of that if I go right back to the start. Right at the end, you see that little bump? That's the refactor. And it doesn't look like such a big deal because that's just one jump. Whereas a lot of the big changes are sort of over tens to hundreds of commits. But that jump you see right at the end there is one commit. So that's actually massive. So that's the refactor. As for what the comment which you see in the jump there is, not actually sure.
Yeah.
What could that be? I know the sort of thing that would be. That would be something like when I've developed some feature I'm very happy with, like let's say the whole conditional LaTeX generated preamble thing. And that's been slowly developing in sort of unstaged land. And then I've got it working. I'm happy. I stage it, and it's one giant commit. So there are a few things like that I've done. I'm not sure which one of them it's going to be, but yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yes, other than that, if you've got any questions, then, well, I can just go here and rerun things on the spot. So, yeah, there we go. Or anything about Belia, because why not? We're here. It was a short talk.
I will be entirely honest. I've been trying, like, while you were talking, I've been trying to figure out when, like, at what point is your config, like, projected to reach. Oh wait, no, I realized. Yeah, like, no wait, like I wanted to try and calculate like when your config is like projected to reach like the maximum information density possible in the universe. But I'm pretty sure I fucked up the calculation because I got 1600 days, and it's probably not that soon.
Yeah, that would be that's a more aggressive timeline than I would have expected.
Yeah, I think I made a mistake, and like exponents are hard. So I don't know. I'll get back to you on that. It's hard to do this type of math live. But yeah. But like 2% per day doesn't sound like a realistic thing, because wouldn't that mean it's like, wait, because if your config is like 10,000 lines, and that means that it's like 200 lines a day. That doesn't sound right.
Actually, that won't be quite right, because what happened is the way that I've generated this is by looking at the change per, let's see. What happens is this is run by, if I actually go up here. So what I quite like about doing slides this way is I can just shove no export tags on things that generate information that then go into following slides, which is quite nice. So yes, if I jump around to actually, let's see, here we go. Run the command. So this is this GitHub Theseus analyze thing. You can see that it's got this interval argument here. And what's happening here is I've set the interval to be, well, 1 day. Because yes, 60 times 24 seconds. And so what happens is yes, Theseus. I thought Murtad would actually comment on that, not you, Flugo. But what this does is it basically lumps commits made within a 1 day period into one event. But if there's been multiple days lapsed, then that's going to be a separate event. So between each event, the config grows by about 2%. No, that's not going to be daily.
Right. Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Because I don't know, because I think with 2% of days, actually, 1600 might not necessarily be that crazy, because exponents get out of hand really fast. So yeah.
If I just look here and go size for X, then we can see that, it's doing image stuff. Yeah, so you can see here there's 188 events have been recorded. And so if we look at it's been about 1.5 years. So that means that there's probably about, what, a third or a fourth as many events as there are days elapsed. So yeah, so that'll put it a more reasonable number.
Probably.
With some definition of reasonable.
Yeah. Do you have any plans to upstream like major parts of your config into Doom?
Doom or packages? So what I've got, if you, I can hold my repo. If I go to my list folder, these are all packages that I have in various states of published or in development. Almost all of which, actually all but one of which, have come from my config.
Wait, what's org music?
Oh, so that's what I have for playing music. So if I go, let's see, org music, press and play, then that will not, let's see, and I type, say, it's not doing anything. Org music. It's something I use rarely. Yeah, it's got the right Empress player. Oh, wait, cache? It does seem to have a cache.
Interesting.
For some reason, it isn't actually showing it, though. I haven't tried this since the Vertigo change. It may be something related to that.
Maybe. I don't know. No, but like, what is it supposed to do? Just like a way to like start.
Yeah, so if I go like this, you can see that I can go for like Alphaville, for example, search long, and if I press hit enter, it will play it.
What does this have to do with org?
So this is a nice UI side, but what I can actually do with it, if I go for an example here, link type, music, I get this completion. And I can select something like, let's see, go back in. So let's see, that for example, and it will, well, untested in a while, because this is what I do for my music recommendations, which, last touched a few months ago. But what it should do is include a link like music, and then let's see, artist, and then possibly song, that sort of thing. And what happens is, A, hitting enter on it will check against the cache and actually play the song, so that link's active. And B, if I export it, it should end up being something somewhat nice. So if I go actually to go to the folder where I got it, music, let's see, it's one file. So for example, what it will do is when you actually export it, it will actually try to search for it on YouTube using the YouTube API and make the exporter link to that song on YouTube, for example. Exporting to HTML or actually any format. That's what it does, for instance. And then similarly, it will access another database to try to find the right album art. And it's just nice export stuff, basically.
Wait, is this like like an actual package that lives outside of your config?
No, so this is a package, sort of, except if I look at Maggot, you'll notice, well, actually if I go back a bit, yes, and look at Maggot, let's see, all music. These are all untracked currently.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, Ox ANSI has been published, but the other ones are basically just sitting on my computer, nowhere else. So yeah, I like to get things into a state I feel like they're generally working before I actually put them on the web.
Yeah.
And as you may have noticed through my demo, all music isn't quite at that state.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, what bit of my config am I the most happy about? That's actually probably going to be a pretty easy question to answer. So the bit which I like the most, I mean, you all know how much I like org, and in particular, how much I care about the exporting side of things, particularly with LaTeX backends. And so the bit which I'm actually probably finding the most satisfying would be the conditional preamble generation bit, which I'd like to jump to, except my config takes an age to load for some strange reason. No idea why. Couldn't possibly be anything to do with the length. Yeah, so if I go to language org, let's see.
Deco, you know there's a thing called consult line, right?
Yeah, but I think what it's called is actually need to go down the tree.
Yeah, fair enough.
Let's see. A clever
no, sorry. I meant consult outline. That like lets you search outline specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Just making sure.
Yeah, I'll just go. Oh, there we go. Lovely. Except yes. So basically, I've got this clever preamble type thing where I define conditional content. So I've got these blocks here, which have LaTeX code I want in certain situations. So all sorts of things like nicer checkboxes, which I only hear about if I have checkboxes. And I've just basically shoved them all into English variables using NoWeb, which is nice and convenient. So I can get all the like LaTeX syntax highlighting for these blocks and then just shove them into strings. The one annoyance is I have to double escape all the backslashes, which, it's a pain. But anyway, and so what I've now got, is that embedding thing, which is just a function which, if I want to embed some files, it will actually generate strings which the, I think, embed file package in LaTeX will use to embed them in my config. So I like that. I like the idea of self-contained files. So basically what I do is I define something which I call a content preamble association. So the idea is that in all sorts of different scenarios, based on certain things being present in the org file, I'll want certain features. So if I don't have any images, I don't care about how captions are formatted. But as soon as I have an image, whether it be an SVG, a JPEG, a PNG, whatever, I want to have things like caption formatting. And if it's an SVG, then well, I want the SVG package. So based on whatever I've got in the document, the actual needs in LaTeX vary dramatically. Now, you could just take the shove everything you could possibly want into it approach. And I did this in the past. I have this custom class which I have, which loads, I think, about 40 or 50 different packages unconditionally. And I have had that take minutes to compile documents. So I've been down that road. The output's nice. It's going to always work because it's set up for everything. But oh, there's such a gap between how long it's taking and how long it could be taking based on all the features you're not using. So having something more minimal, I think, makes a lot of sense. And so that's what I've endeavored to implement here. So basically what I have here is, this is a giant association list of regex that indicate that a certain feature is being used in the org file and just symbols to associate with it. So for example, if I've got float sideways somewhere, I'm going to want to be rotating things. If I've got, say, XKCD anywhere, well, that means I'm using images and captions and that sort of thing. And it's got this, I feel it's got a rather flexible format because you can combine, it actually accepts a lot of different forms. So it's got, most of these are regex that I use to indicate the presence of a feature. But you can also have other things. For example, here it's looking at, it's running a function to determine it. Here it's checking a variable, and then it's actually, if that variable is truthy, then it's checking this regex, that sort of thing. So yes, there's a certain documentation associated, but I've tried to make something rather flexible because sometimes the simple regex works, other times you need more, and I've tried to actually accommodate that somewhat nicely. So this is sort of stage one. You figure out what the document's actually asking for feature-wise. And then basically, yeah, I've got some more explanations based on this. But the idea is then what you do is you describe how these particular named features are implemented. So that's what I've got here, where, let's see, let's make this bigger. So for all the various symbols, I've got snippets. And snippets do a similar thing here to I mentioned, where the actual form of the regex to check the features was fairly versatile. Here's a similar thing. Most of these are just strings, but some of these are variables, some of these are functions, and some of these are just body statements. Like, for example, here you've got, yeah, concatenating certain things based on a check, that sort of thing. Where this also becomes quite nice is it's got a few extra bits of functionality. For example, you can define relationships between certain features and others. For example, and that's what I've got here with this requires keyword. So, for example, if I have a box which is labeled with info, that's going to require the fancy box, which requires the fancy box preamble here. And in order for the fancy box preamble to actually work, it assumes that Python has been loaded. And whenever this is included, it has to be put at order 3.6. So what this does is, imagine running through all of this, you end up with a whole list of features that are needed. But obviously, if you want to start doing things that involve a certain package in LaTeX, you have to load it first. So in this way, you can actually specify the order in which these statements must appear. So when this actually runs through, it expands out all the requires. There's also a prevents keyword when features are incompatible or one precludes the other. It gets everything in the right order, executes all the functions, expands all the variables, that sort of thing, and then injects this into the generated LaTeX preamble when, yeah, at export time. So yeah, that's what this does. And why has that done that? Yeah. So yes, basically that runs, and then yeah, this is basically just the implementation that I was talking about, where yep, it expands all the features, looks at requirements, that sort of thing, and then does that. Then there's one particular sort of cherry on top which I have here. So if I go for, let's see, this will take a second because it does with this particular file. All I'm doing is the the space SS search. So if I try this again, usually it doesn't work the first time for some odd reason. Whatever. Lua LaTeX. Yes. So for example, there's a particular thing which I quite like here, some advice here. Now, as I've made abundantly clear so far, I'm rather liking Julia. Julia is great because it allows for all sorts of esoteric symbols that can confuse people. And that way it's great for sort of job guarantee. I wrote this code, nobody else can touch it, that sort of thing. I also think it looks pretty, which is my real motivation, but pick whichever of those actually sounds nicer to you. The thing is, in order to actually include all those symbols in a generated PDF, PDF LaTeX doesn't cut it. But the thing is, I really like PDF LaTeX. It's faster, and it also particularly has much, I'd say significantly better support for the micro typography package in LaTeX. So there's certain features like font protrusion, that sort of thing, which don't work with Lua LaTeX. So I want to use PDF LaTeX whenever possible. But when I've got Julia code, that's just simply not an option. So what do? Well, we make use of the fact that I've done all this feature detection here. So if I go over here, you can see this lovely statement, org LaTeX detect features. And this will have a look and see if I'm actually using any Julia code. And this is a bit clever than just going through. It actually checks to see if any Julia code blocks are exported into the final product. And so if I actually do have that as a registered feature, then what it will do is when it's generating the template, it will actually make sure to use the Lua LaTeX compiler. There's just a little switch that happens. If I have to be using Lua LaTeX, then yep, just automatically switch it out. If not, just stick with the default, which is quite nice. And there's also some other little things I have running, like for example, I've got a list of characters which are Unicode that can be represented fairly easily with LaTeX, and so it just turns them into, well, LaTeX whenever possible. And then if I'm not using Lua LaTeX, and this is just so it works basically, because funny stuff can happen. And like not having Julia got some weird character in it. And so this way, all of the ones which aren't recognized, yep, LaTeX, there's a LaTeX version of this and I can transform it into that. It just turns them all into, I think, either upside down or box question marks, just so that the compilation actually succeeds. Because yeah, it comes up when I just use an odd Unicode character somewhere. This used to be a big issue for me with emojis, but if I have a look under emoji, let's see. Yeah, emojis, I've actually got that sorted now, because I've got some more advice type functions that actually, when you export, look for all the emojis in the file and replace them with, well, add the command. This is all, once again, done through this lovely sort of dynamic dispatch with features based on the current document. If there are no emojis, none of this will happen. If there are emojis, well, then we're adding this document command, which will include an emoji in the document, which is rather nice. And so, yeah, because the thing is, if you've got the Emojify package, it's already downloading, I think, PNG images for all the emojis. And that's quite nice because I can just include those sort of by default. But what's actually a bit nicer is getting, because the thing is, PNGs are raster graphics. So what this means is if I want an emoji and I just use the format that actually comes with Emojify, which automatically downloads, then it's 72px squared, which means if you zoom in on my lovely generated LaTeX, you're going to see pixels with the emoji. And that's a travesty, I think. I mean, you're zooming in on this thing which you reasonably expect should be a vector graphic, and it's just not. So I thought it'd be good to save that sort of disappointment for anybody that zooms in at several 100% on a document with an emoji. And so what's worth doing here is actually getting the PDFs that can be included. You can use SVGs, but what happens is when you have SVGs and the SVG package, all that does is it uses Inkscape to convert them to PDFs, which are included. But that adds time, so it's better to do this ahead of time, really. So what we do here is we have a little bit of advice, which checks to see if we actually have PDF emojis around. And if we do, great. If not, it actually goes ahead, downloads the source that the Emojify package uses, which contains SVG versions. And then what we do is we call, I believe, is it in parallel or no? I think it's serial. Well, we download it in serial, and then we check to see if there's the Cairo SVG executable. And if that's present, yeah, I went to the effort of multi-threading this. I don't know why I did. I think I got fed up of waiting and decided instead of waiting, I'll just multi-thread it. It probably would have taken me less time if I just waited, but hey, why not? Yes, all of this for emoji. But yeah, so basically what we did is based on we'll just switch based on what's available. I'll be using Inkscape or Kai SVG, which is slightly faster, and it will just use how many threads you've got available. Oh no, one less than how many threads you've got available. Can't have the computer freezing up. And just batch convert all the SVGs to PDFs. And so, yeah, once that's happened, it's all great. It just shoves them into some predictable location, which looks like I just put them next to the other emojis. Yeah, that seems pretty reasonable. And so that way I can get lovely vector graphic emojis in my PDFs, which, once again, relies on that dynamic dispatch to actually determine when this is necessary. Because otherwise you're going to a whole lot of effort for, well, the first time, a whole lot of effort for no good reason.
Deco, I have 2 questions. Okay, so first, like, I just realized you don't like use any namespacing or anything for a config. Don't you like run into problems with that with like the 10 bajillion functions you have?
So usually I can tell based on the naming if a function is mine or not, which is sort of good enough for me. The other thing is, the way in which I split things up into packages and or upstream them is actually somewhat frequent. And so if I don't do anything, if I namespace it as if I'm building it into the thing, then I can just copy and paste when I decide to upstream it, which is just a little bit less effort. And then finally, there's just the fact that because I've got, like, how many defunds I got here? Okay, 163 defunds, def bar, 80 def bars. So they're about what? I've got 300, well, if I had there're going to be a few other odd things, so about 300 symbols overall. And so if I'm constantly referencing those symbols, if I have like a short prefix, that's going to actually be thousands more characters. And I already run into like long line length issues, that sort of thing. So it's going to be a minor thing, but I reckon it's going to be noticeably clunkier to work with if I prefix so much stuff.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so like also like honestly, because you started using Doom in like January of like 2020, right? Like Emacs.
Yep.
Well, yeah. So like, did you have like anything like resembling like I guess the vibe of this config before that, or did you just like start with like a normal config and like slowly like a frog boiled in water eventually like end up with this thing?
So there is a way of seeing this where this is the way that I've gone with this overall is sort of an inevitability.
Is what?
And that's based on what happened with me in VS Code, which is what I was using before Emacs.
Wait. No, what is the word that you said that ends with ility?
Inevitability.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, because this can be seen as one based on what I was doing with VS Code. But the VS Code, like, yes, just install the relevant packages. That's nice. I was like, this isn't doing what I want. Not the way I want it. And so the main thing I was doing at the time was just writing LaTeX documents. And so I became, I think, at one point, I think I was for some time the number 3 in terms of total comments, most active contributor to the predominant LaTeX package for VS Code. And so I did a whole bunch of that. Then that wasn't going far enough. So I made some of my pull requests started getting rejected because sort of out of scope. So I ended up making, wonder how that could happen. So that led me to make a package which actually extended that original package. It was a bit annoying because there are all these things I wanted to make use of in the original package, which had to actually be, you couldn't just dig into it like you could with eLisp. You had to actually go over and ask, hey, could you please export this function? That sort of thing. Which VS Code does actually provide that capability for packages to export functionality. It's just rare, incredibly rare. Like it's the sort of thing where if it weren't a feature, I don't think you'd be able to tell the difference, sort of as a user. And so yes, but I sort of kept on going down that rabbit hole. I think VS Code config, which is just a .json file, managed to get into the thousands of lines. Somehow.
Yeah. So I imagine going from that sort of thing to like an Emacs config was like finally like I don't know, untying your hands from your back.
I've been trying to modify things for ages. It's just something. It's not a habit I have. Like I use something and then I instantly sort of start thinking, how could this be nicer? And it's just that in Emacs, the sort of distance between wanting something to be nicer and being able to make that nicer was drastically shortened.
Yeah.
And that was a very dangerous thing, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit of a two-way sword or whatever you call it. Yeah.
Yes.
Um.
Alrighty. Anything else?
Have you tried Tectonic yet?
Tectonic, no. Originally, it wasn't because of the shell escape, but I'm slowly resolving those sorts of issues. I made an issue complaining about the lack of shell escape on Tectonic, which was fairly well received, and now that's been closed, which is good. And then also, let's see, we've now got things which actually mean that I don't need as much shell escape as before. For example, the shift to minted to Emacs at compile time or at export based time, syntax highlighting, for example. And I think I might actually be using bib-latex less, just because the new org site stuff is fantastic. And if you use CSL, you can have a one-to-one match between in-buffer rendered citations and what's on export. And I think that's pretty neat.
Yeah, I mostly bring it up because I don't know if it would help your compile times, but I'm fairly certain that whole emoji problem simply isn't a problem in Tectonic. Like,
yeah, the thing is
you could
it
just
using the
pass through
right emoji
font.
font?
You can override individual fonts, and I'm actually trying to figure out right now exactly what LaTeX incantation you need to set the emoji font. Because Tectonic supports just arbitrary TTF and OTF fonts, meaning you can just tell it to use like Noto color emoji or whatever you want, or Twimoji or whatever you have installed.
You need to do any extra configuration in Emacs to like use Tectonic properly?
It's yes, but it's one line.
Do you want to upstream that one line to Doom?
It's going to be this one.
Yeah.
Oh, you just need to set the LaTeX compiler and it's good?
No, actually, because the problem is if you change the LaTeX compiler, it's still going to use LaTeX MK.
Yeah,
which Tectonic doesn't support LaTeX MK because it doesn't need it. It takes its place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like the LaTeX module in Doom should probably have a Tectonic flag, that's like mutually exclusive with the LaTeX make flag.
Possibly, but I'll drop it again in the.
What you're going to want to change then is for the LaTeX MK.
Yeah, I'll drop it in the LaTeX.
So you want to
Discord
modify
channel.
this one?
Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean.
Yep. I just dropped it in the LaTeX Discord channel. It's a one-liner, so it's not really enough to bother with a flag, especially because it kind of breaks other stuff. Because if you want to switch back and forth between PDF LaTeX, you would then have to switch back and forth between LaTeX MK and Tectonic. And that could, I mean, you could definitely write it out and do it more, but I feel like it's sort of not worth it when just overriding for Tectonic is one line.
Well, I mean, I don't know, because you're saying conflicting things. Saying that it's like on the one hand it's like one line, but on the other hand they're like it like has non-trivial interaction with other stuff. But
it's not that it's a non-trivial interaction. It's that it's entirely replacing like the entire other workflow.
Fine. So it does like weird stuff from the user perspective that could be accommodated with like more lines.
Possibly, yeah.
Basically, the improvement with Tectonic with font type things is just because it's using XE LaTeX instead of PDF LaTeX. But as I mentioned before, I quite like the things which the microtypography package does, which currently only work with PDF LaTeX.
Actually,
which is one of the things which is keeping me on this.
One oddity with Tectonic, and don't quote me on this because I still can't get a good answer on this. I don't think they actually use XE LaTeX. I think they re-implemented it.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
have done something a bit weird. I'm not entirely sure what, but
I'm
if
pretty
you're
sure they
saying that, I'll
rewrote
believe
it.
you.
I'm pretty sure they rewrote it in Rust.
Damn. Insert joke here.
Yeah, like the joke is there, but that's also why they were able to do all the weird things they did. Like, okay, full Unicode support, lazy dependency grabbing and lazy recompilation, which is why I think it might help with your compile times if you had one giant like template. I don't know. It might work. It might be faster. It might not.
Oh, well, definitely something I'm going to be looking at some point. I've got no idea when. Yeah, I'll see. But no, but yeah, the general state of things is pretty good though. I mean, the thing which I've liked about this, though, is just overall, it's made it quite smooth for me to be able to take things and then move them into packages or upstream, that sort of thing.
Wait, what is the deal with the no octet? However you say that, like, please, like, what's the deal with that?
Oh, I think I had an issue at some point.
Wait, you just don't use it?
No. So this is particularly when doing org exporting. I actually submitted a patch to fix this, so this might actually be fine now.
Oh man, there's like I forget what I did. It's somewhere in like the to-dos for Evil Tech. There's like this obscure bug that like Marco and I found in Octech like a year ago that we meant to like at least tell them about, and I never did that.
I mean, I've also got this if you go to orgtex. Let's see. I got rid of it. At some point, for a while I had the commit of orgtex pinned because the bump broke some particular piece of functionality. So yes.
Yeah.
It's been interesting in that regard.
Oh right, yeah. No, there's a bug in, or at least there used to be. I haven't checked recently. In tech find macro bug where like it doesn't find macro start where like it doesn't find the start of a macro correctly for some weird edge cases.
Oh, that's really minor. I get errors every time I open a LaTeX file.
Wait, what are you doing that causes the errors?
Oh, if it goes to actually, let's see, .text. Let's try this. No, not that one.
Right, we really need to fix the alignment thing with the marginality annotations, like.
Try this one.
That is actually, I think that is probably like
better, actually.
What?
I've got better actually.
The Octech bug?
I don't actually deal with raw LaTeX basically at all anymore, unless I'm debugging why org exports didn't work as I wanted. So, yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's been a while. Actually, if I'm going to be sitting here potentially showing cool things, one thing which I would like to jump back to is if I go back to the slide, because I've got an open Julia session here, which is quite nice. One of the nice things which has been added to org recently is, so if I load that's using latexify, which should take a second, I need to get rid of these images because they're causing issues. Yeah, that one. Wait, why am I there? Whatever. Goodbye. And let's see how about HTTPS. Goodbye. Like, that's better. I don't know why, but for some reason they get reloaded every time I run any particular code block, which is annoying. But if I go, let's see, latexify true. Let's pray that this actually works as I'm used to doing. Yeah, we get this, which is lovely. So there's a package in Julia called latexify, and it does exactly what you'd expect. Given some sort of Julia object, it will do its best to turn it into a LaTeX representation of said object. And what I've done is, based on that, for one, I've added this little header argument that can be applied to Julia code blocks, which is latexify. What's nice about this is because it's an argument in this sort of form, you can actually shove it, for example, as a header arg and just have it apply to everything. And the other thing it does is, thanks to some, I think at the moment it's slightly dodgy. Julia. Yes, let's see. Yeah, over Julia. And I just search here for advice Yeah, here you go. So I have this function called org latexify make raw. And what it does is when you've got it's got a hub, right? This Julia code block gave us a latexified output, which it does by just doing a few regex checks based on the string version of the output. Like if it starts with \begin, open curly brace, that sort of thing, then, well, it's a LaTeX form. Like, I don't think you can actually trick this based on some other stuff that's happening on the Julia side. But what happens is I go, let's see, advice. Yeah, I advise org Babel insert result to just tidy up the LaTeX result from latexify. And then thanks to a patch which made its way into org a few months ago, what happens is org now actually nicely like replaces LaTeX environment results. So that means that whatever LaTeX you get spit out can, and then let's see, there's also a little check that happens whenever there's new results, which goes, if you've got fragtog installed and enabled in this buffer, it will just straight up render the LaTeX right there. And what's nice, particularly nice about this, is latexify isn't just some niche package. It's actually been supported by quite a few other packages. For example, there's some ones for looking at, there's like the package for symbolic manipulation in Julia supports it. So anything you're doing with that, so integrals, derivatives, all of that sort of thing, you can just get it to spit out the nice, pretty LaTeX representation. And then there are other things like there's one for solving ODEs, and it's a whole bunch of other things, which have all got sort of support for latexify. And so a lot of sort of Julia constructs.
Wait, but does latexify, like for like long equations and stuff like that, does it like does it spit out like, I guess, good LaTeX forms? Because Mathematica has like a tech export thing, but like if you use like slightly fancy symbols, then it exports stuff that needs like a lot of manual editing to be like human read and writable, basically. Does Julia have that issue, or is it fine?
Let's see. I think this. Let's see. Well, this is what I expect it will. Yeah. So you can use this plus.
Wait. Do n underscore like infinity, maybe. I don't know. It's like because I mean my primary
underscore.
What?
I can't do this like straight up underscore. Not without doing other things. The reason why I haven't loaded symbolics, but I have mentioned it, is because it takes ages to actually do the like initial just-in-time compiling.
Yeah.
And so you'd be sitting here staring at nothing for, I don't know, 20, 30 seconds.
Oh, yeah, well, I don't know. Mathematica, like, it annoys me because there are some things that it does like so well and some things that it's garbage at. It feels like it's like a golden handcuff, but also a program.
But yeah, and then the other nice thing about this, one of the nice things about Julia, like the fact that it actually has like quite nice macros and like little utility things. Like I've just completely devolved to talking about Julia here, but I'm going to embrace it until someone starts complaining. So like something which I mentioned to Danny actually recently for assignment. Here you go. So this is for an honors unit I'm doing. So basically for this honors unit, it requires me to be actually implementing root and minimization finding algorithms from scratch, which of course involves things like Hessian matrices, Jacobians, all that sort of thing. Yeah. Completely reasonable given I've now gone off track. Let's actually go to the assignment and look at the org file. So like the last question they have here, let's see, they actually are a bit tricky, for example. So they've got this probit regression and they're doing a link function. And so if you're actually trying to look at doing, say, Newton-Raphson based, well, root finding or minimization, you need to basically find the Hessian matrix for whatever happens when you shove the CDF of a normal distribution and some matrix multiplication together. Which is just, you've got some simple coefficients, but then, yeah, summing the log of the normal CDF, it just finding the Hessian or anything like that algebraically is going to be painful. But you have to do things from scratch. And so I thought, you know what? I've heard about this order differentiation thing about it. How easy is it to implement in Julia? And it turns out that you can actually do a pretty good job of this in about 50 lines or less, which I was really happy to discover. So this just does the whole thing. And order diff basically just expands the derivatives, except when you're actually evaluating numerical forms, if you haven't come across it before. So it gives you the exact derivatives, well, as far as machine precision can go, but it's better than finite differences. And yeah, Julia is literally just, here's this diff struct, which just takes number and carries along the derivatives, well, the Jacobian and the Hessian, and then just keep track on that. Here's a little macro to make the chain rule work nicely for me, where, yeah, finding the Hessian was a bit of a pain. And then just chain up a bunch of all the functions I'm reasonably going to be using, and then shove it into this simple minimization, which is then a breeze. And yeah, that ended up just being really nice, which is something which made me appreciate how nice Julia can be for these sorts of things. Because while searching the web, I saw, for example, other examples in Python and so on, and it's not nearly as nice, to put it simply. So there you go. I'll put my diversion to an end now. Particularly as it wasn't asked for.
Yeah.
But that's something I found nice. Which basically seems like the theme of these talks. So
yeah. I don't know. There's like this famous like NeoVim talk by Justin something, Justin MK or whatever he's called. That is called like "We Can Have Nice Things." So we can indeed have nice things.
Julia's nice, and the integration of it with Emacs is, it with org in particular, is reaching a state which I personally feel very happy about. Like with the Latexify stuff I was showing.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So,
So like thanks Deco, and like thanks I guess for like doing talks, even the people who left because I don't know, people like time zones and commitments and stuff. So I don't know how much you've been like showing stuff, so maybe you didn't see the chat, but like people like honestly, if Hazel could do like an actual like intro to Racket for Dummies talk, that would be super cool. And maybe the next one. So wait, Eccentric-J, do you want to say something or? No? Yes? Maybe?
Yeah, I think sorry, did you guys take us or?
I don't think Teco was saying anything.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, the floor is yours. You can say stuff. Like no one else has a thing they want to say.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, like Fugo, the question of what's going on is that like we're doing the conversational equivalent of like 4 cars in like an intersection that everyone's waiting for the other person to go first. So
yeah, I just want to say, if you don't mind.
Right.
Thanks everyone for coming. It really means a lot for everyone to come here and gather and then give these talks. I know it was a little on the shorter notice than we wanted, but we basically prototyped this conference, and now we can kind of iterating on it and make it even better for the next one. So thanks everyone for coming out, giving us your time.
And of course, like a big thanks to Jay for organizing the whole thing, like nudging everyone to like actually like show up and do stuff. Because let's face it, without him, like the conference would not happen. So
you had the idea and went through organizing it.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Like when it comes to like when like a next one will happen, is like I don't know, probably like in a few months or whatever, whenever like sort of organically happens, or when like Henrik can give his like actual State of Doom speech, which I'm sure that like we all actually want to hear. But it's like. So I have no idea if I'll manage to like find like a thing to talk about for the next one, but I don't know, doing talks is really fun, and like hearing talks is also really fun because shockingly like there are interesting things that aren't just the sound of my own voice. So
do we want to do like a summer and a winter one? Call this the summer one and do one in like January?
Yeah, we can do one. It's just I don't think we need to have like a set schedule. Like I think that we can, because the thing is, like,
Yeah, just
I mean, yeah,
being
we,
rough
we
with
can
it.
we can like aim to do one in the winter, but honestly, I feel like there's a good chance of like doing one in like 3-4 months or whatever, because I like because honestly, the next one is probably going to happen whenever Henrik feels like he can do like a State of Doom talk, and then like we'll find
Whenever Doom 3.0 actually comes out.
Yeah, exactly.
It seems like a few months, I'm gonna hesitantly say.
Yeah, it's
That was the only good time.
Yeah, I mean the discourse has like Q3 2021 as like the target date, so hopefully, and
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, indeed. So yeah, so well, it was nice seeing all of you. Till next time.
Yeah, till next time.
See you later, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, see you later, everyone.
Yep.
Oh, send me your slides. I'll put them on the website.
Oh yeah, no, I'll do that later. I just need to go. Also, I don't know how useful my slides are. They like most of they don't really contain all that much, but I'll send them. Yeah.
It'll go with Jay took a recording, so it'll go with.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. Bye. Bye.
See you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Later.
I don't know how to quit.
Just close the tab.
That works.